Chapter 252. The banquet Hu Jinyao mentioned was on Friday night. Su Qingsang didn't have to go to work the next day. She worked the night shift the night before and slept at home on Friday morning. When she woke up, she received a call from Hu Jinyao. He said that he had sent someone to deliver clothes. When Su Qingsang hung up the phone, Yang Wencheng arrived. Not only did he send clothes, but he also brought 2 stylists to do Su Qingsang's hair. Su Qingsang didn't expect Hu Jinyao to be so considerate. After thanking Yang Wencheng, she entered the room with the 2 stylists. An hour later, Su Qingsang was done. When she stood up and was about to leave, she found that Hu Jinyao had come back. "You're back." Seeing Hu Jinyao in the mirror, Su Qingsang quickly turned around with a look of surprise on her face. "Yes. I'm here to pick you up." Hu Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang, his eyes full of amazement. The dress he chose for Su Qingsang was a white one-shoulder dress. There were no complicated decorations, just a simple white dress. He just put effort into the tailoring. The clean line from the right shoulder showed off her rounded shoulder. The dress was ankle length, and underneath it was a pair of silver high heels he chose. The diamond-studded shoes looked noble and elegant. At the same time, it also lengthened Su Qingsang's height, making her look especially slender and graceful. The stylist only did a simple job on Su Qingsang's hair to match the dress. She curled a few big waves at the end of her hair and let it fall over her right shoulder. In this way, the shoulder was half covered, but it looked more sexy than if it was completely exposed. "Honey, you're so beautiful today." Hu Jinyao was not stingy with his compliments. Su Qingsang blushed a little. There were people around. The 2 stylists were quite perceptive. They said goodbye and left. Hu Jinyao could now focus on his beautiful wife. He stepped forward, held Su Qingsang's hand, and looked her up and down. "Honey, I have good taste, right? I picked this dress." "Yes." Was she trying to praise her or herself? But, it's still missing something. As Hu Jinyao spoke, he took 2 steps toward her. Su Qingsang saw that he was still holding a box in his hand. Su Qingsang watched him open the box. Inside was a 3-piece set of diamond jewelry. Pink diamonds of different sizes were arranged in a circle, and in the middle was a starlight design. The matching bracelet and earrings were also made of pink diamonds. They were so bright that they almost dazzled Su Qingsang. She looked at the necklace and thought of the diamond ring Hu Jinyao had given her. "Well, you're not lying again, are you?" Su Qingsang joked with him. She knew in her heart that it couldn't be false. "Honey, you're so smart," Hu Jinyao joked. He picked up the necklace and put it on Su Qingsang. Hu Jinyao took the initiative to serve her. Looking at Su Qingsang in front of him, he took a step back, his eyes full of admiration. "Perfect. Let's go." "Wife. The banquet is about to begin." The banquet was booked in a villa on the outskirts of Lin City. Hu Jinyao told Su Qingsang that it was a small banquet. However, this banquet was not small at all. When Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang arrived, many people had already arrived. Tianyu Group had been making frequent moves in Lin City in the past few months. Anyone with a bit of foresight would want to establish a relationship with the Tianyu Group. Of course, there were some people who didn't need to claim connections. They already had connections with the Tianyu Group. For example, Qiu Yanba. As one of the collaborators, he was also attending the banquet today. Chapter 253. Like most of the men who came today, when Qiu Yanba saw Su Qingsang, he was stunned. It was as if a person who was usually only 8 out of 10 had suddenly become 10 out of 10. Su Qingsang was indeed not an outstanding beauty. She looked gentle and beautiful. Because she studied medicine, she had a clean and refreshing temperament. She was standing next to Hu Jinyao. She was wearing a white dress and Hu Jinyao was wearing a dark suit. When the 2 of them stood together, it was as if they were a golden couple. Su Qingsang stood next to Hu Jinyao. She didn't know much about business, but she was a very qualified listener. When Hu Jinyao chatted with others, she stood next to him and listened. Occasionally, when someone specifically asked her, Hu Jinyao had already begun to introduce her without her saying anything. "This is my wife, Su Qingsang." Su. The surname Su wasn't a big one in Lin City, but there were only one or two famous Su families. Some people who had attended Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao's wedding banquet recognized her immediately. Hu Jinyao was very famous in Lin City now, but he hadn't had the chance to meet him before. Soon, almost everyone in the banquet hall knew that the wife of the president of Tianyu Group, who showed her face for the first time in public, was Su Qingsang. Even more quickly, people knew Su Qingsang's identity. The illegitimate daughter of the Su family, a person who had almost been abandoned by her family, was actually the wife of the president of Tianyu Group. This was simply too shocking. This led to more and more people sizing up Su Qingsang, both openly and discreetly. Qiu Yanba walked towards Su Qingsang under the watchful eyes of the crowd. "Are you tired?" Hu Jinyao put his arm around Su Qingsang's waist. He had never seen her wear high heels. Although the shoes today weren't particularly high, they were much higher than the shoes she usually wore. "I'm fine." She had just arrived. How was she tired? Su Qingsang shook her head and glanced at the banquet hall. "Did your company specially rent this villa for the banquet?" Hu Jinyao looked at her and shook his head. "No." As he spoke, he kissed Su Qingsang on the cheek and whispered in her ear, "You'll know later." He was acting mysteriously. If he didn't say anything, Su Qingsang wouldn't ask. Out of the corner of his eye, Hu Jinyao saw Qiu Yanba walking towards him. He frowned and his eyes darkened. "Qingsang." "President Hua." Qiu Yanba greeted the two of them. The way he addressed them was very familiar. Hu Jinyao looked at Qiu Yanba's outstretched hand and shook Qiu Yanba's. "Boss Qiu is really punctual. It's my duty." Qiu Yanba smiled indifferently and ignored Hu Jinyao's piercing gaze. He withdrew his hand and reached out to Su Qingsang. "Qingsang, you look beautiful today." "Thank you." Su Qingsang was about to shake hands with him, but Hu Jinyao grabbed her hand and pulled her to his side. "She's not just beautiful today." Hu Jinyao completely ignored Qiu Yanba's hand, which was still in the air, and kissed Su Qingsang on the cheek. "In my eyes, Qingsang is beautiful every day." Su Qingsang was a little embarrassed. She quietly pinched Hu Jinyao's waist. How could he praise his wife like that? "I didn't say anything wrong." Hu Jinyao didn't feel any pain from Su Qingsang's pinch. Instead, he leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. "My wife is beautiful every day." Chapter 254. Qiu Yanba looked at Hu Jinyao's movements and calmly retracted his hand. "Really? I think so too." Su Qingsang was even more embarrassed. She really couldn't accept Qiu Yanba's sudden friendliness. She looked at the entrance and found that the Su family had arrived. Su Chenghui and Li Qianxue would never want to attend this banquet if they had a choice. But now they couldn't. Hu Jinyao had revealed his identity and also cooperated with the Li Corporation on a billion-dollar investment project. Su Chenghui and Li Qianxue could ignore Su Qingsang, but now they had to respect Hu Jinyao. Su Peijian came with them. Compared to Su Qingsang, who was wearing a white dress, she was wearing a very eye-catching red dress. Her facial features were more beautiful than Su Qingsang's. Coupled with the red dress, she looked flamboyant and gorgeous. As soon as she appeared at the door with Su Chenghui and his wife, it was very eye-catching. Everyone present looked at the Su family. Many people still had an impression of the previous wedding. For the Su family, that wedding was simple to the point of being shabby. The Su family's attitude toward Su Qingsang was obvious. But now it was different. Su Qingsang was married to Hu Jinyao. He was the young master of the Hua family in Rome City. The Su family must be regretting it so much that their intestines would turn green, right? Li Qianxue frowned as soon as she came in. She completely ignored the surrounding people's gazes and walked straight to Hua Jinyao. Dad. Auntie. You're here. Compared to the cold attitude of the Su family, Hua Jinyao's attitude could be said to be very friendly. What a coincidence. Mr. Chiu only arrived a few minutes earlier than you. He knew that Su Peijian and Qiu Yanba had broken off their engagement, but he still pretended not to know. Su Peijian's expression was a little ugly. She stood there without moving, only looking at Su Qingsang. Her gaze fell on the necklace around her neck. That was last month. The limited edition jewelry that Master William had just released. She hadn't ordered it yet, but Su Qingsang had already put it on. She was just an illegitimate daughter. Wasn't she afraid of losing her good fortune by being so flamboyant? Uncle, auntie. Compared to the Su family, Qiu Yanba's attitude was much more friendly. Peijian, long time no see. It's been a long time. Su Peijian withdrew her gaze from Su Qingsang and said expressionlessly, to think that you still remember. Su Qingsang took a step back without a trace. She had a feeling that a fight was about to break out in this situation. Hua Jinyao squeezed her little hand as if he knew what she was thinking. Dad. Auntie, I still have a few friends I need to take Qingsang to say hello to, so I'll have to wait for a while. Please help yourselves. Hua Jinyao left with Su Qingsang, leaving the Su family looking at each other, as if they couldn't believe that Hua Jinyao didn't give them face. Only Su Peijian noticed that when Su Qingsang was about to leave, Qiu Yanba's gaze lingered on her for a while longer. Was it unintentional, or was it intentional? After all, Su Chenghui was an experienced man. Even if he didn't like Qiu Yanba breaking off the engagement with his daughter, he still maintained his composure. Su Peijian had been observing Qiu Yanba the whole time. She barely noticed that his eyes were on Su Qingsang. She slowly relaxed. Just then, someone came over to greet her. She exchanged greetings with the newcomer. Chapter 255. Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao met a circle of people, many of whom she had seen at the Su family's banquets before. However, at that time, her identity was the illegitimate daughter of the Su family. But now, she had become the wife of the president of Tianyu Group. Naturally, those people's attitudes also changed. This was actually quite an ironic thing. However, Su Qingsang wouldn't take these people's attitudes to heart. This was how the circle worked. Only those who were valued by their families would be recognized in the circle. Those who were not valued by their families would naturally not be looked upon favorably by their families. Halfway through the banquet, Su Qingsang saw Li Junxing arrive. It was a great honor for the Tianyu group to be able to invite the mayor to the banquet. However, Su Qingsang, who had gone to Rong City and learned about the relationship between Hua Jinyao and Li Junxing, was not surprised. Hua Jinyao and Li Junxing were just ordinary friends. However, there were a lot of guests at the moment, so he still had to greet them. Go ahead. I'm going to the bathroom. All right. Hua Jinyao patted the back of her hand. Come here quickly after you're done. I still have to introduce Junxing to you. Su Qingsang couldn't help but roll her eyes at him, as if he was telling the truth. Coming out of the bathroom, Su Qingsang was about to walk through the corridor to the banquet hall when a tall figure appeared in front of her. Her footsteps stopped and she took a step back. Looking at the person in front of him, he nodded and was about to walk past him. Qingsang. Qiu Yanba looked at Su Qingsang with amazement and admiration in his eyes. You're so beautiful today. Today, Su Qingsang was so beautiful that he couldn't resist her. Thank you. Su Qingsang didn't want to waste any more time with Qiu Yanba. Others might not know, but she knew it very well. Ever since I left Qingyuan County, I haven't had the chance to meet with you. A long time has passed in the blink of an eye. What's the matter? Su Qingsang interrupted him. Her rather impolite attitude made Xiao Yanba smile bitterly. Qingsang, can't I look for you for no reason? No. Su Qingsang's refusal was straightforward and simple. I'm married, and you're my brother-in-law. Your sister and I have already broken off our engagement. So what? Does it have anything to do with me? Of course. I broke off the engagement because of you. Stop. Su Qingsang had known about this before, but she still couldn't bear to hear Qiao Yanba repeat it again with such a resolute attitude. Qiao Yanba, you breaking off the engagement with my sister is your own business. It has nothing to do with me. Don't tell me it's for me. But, I did it for you. When Qiao Yanba said this, he looked at her affectionately. If I had seen the good in you earlier, I wouldn't have gotten engaged to Su Peijian. Qiao Yanba. Su Qingsang was so angry that she almost laughed. Don't you feel guilty for saying that? How long had he been engaged to Su Peijian? How many years has it been? Speaking of which, the two of them were childhood sweethearts. And now you're saying it's inappropriate? Why did he put the blame on her? She thanked him, but she couldn't afford such a reason. Qingsang. Qiao Yanba sighed and took a step forward. I don't care if you believe me or not, and I don't care what you think, but I have to let you know how I feel. I got it. Can I go now? Su Qingsang tried to walk around him again, but Qiao Yanba reached out and grabbed her hand. Chapter 256. Who told you that I had no choice but to be with Hu Jinyao? Isn't it? Of course not. Even though she had gotten married casually in the beginning, her feelings for Hu Jinyao had slowly changed over the past few months. Do you like him? Qiao Yanba's expression was a little ugly. It was even more difficult for him to say those words. He's my husband. If I don't like him, do I like you? Su Qingsang didn't dare to say that she was in love with Hu Jinyao right now, but she really liked him. Qiao Yanba's expression was not good, and there was a clear flash of jealousy in his eyes. He looked at Su Qingsang's beautiful face. She was really beautiful, but such beauty had nothing to do with him. A wave of unwillingness surged in his heart. He reached out and hugged Su Qingsang. If you give me a chance, I think I can make you forget him and fall in love with me. Qiao Yanba. She didn't know that Qiao Yanba was so narcissistic. That's impossible. You haven't even tried, so how do you know it's impossible? Qiao Yanba's hand was still on her waist. The dress was light, and she could feel the warmth of his palm on the back of her waist. She was not used to it, and her face turned cold. Qiao Yanba, let go of me. What if I don't? She smelled so good. It wasn't the fragrance of perfume, but a light, extremely elegant fragrance. He couldn't help but move closer to smell it more clearly. Seeing him approaching, Su Qingsang pushed him away without thinking and moved away from his arms. Qiao Yanba. Su Qingsang was still concerned about the fact that he had saved her life last time. I'm already married. You can divorce even if you're married. Qiao Yanba didn't care about that. Su Qingsang looked at him as if she was looking at a lunatic. My husband is Hu Jinyao. She didn't know Hu Jinyao's identity before, but now she did. The eldest son of the Hu family in Rong City. The president of Tianyu Group. Could she get a divorce with such an identity? Qingsang, do you really not think that Hu Jinyao married you for a purpose? Because of Hu Jinyao's identity, Qiao Yanba increasingly believed that Hu Jinyao couldn't be true to Su Qingsang. Hearing that, Su Qingsang frowned deeply. Qiao Yanba. I don't know what's wrong with you. Why do you have to say such strange things to me? But I want to tell you that it's impossible for me and you. It's impossible even without Hu Jinyao. Why? You're so smart, how could you not know? She liked a peaceful life. If she got together with Qiao Yanba, she would not be able to live in peace for the rest of her life. That was definitely not what she wanted. Qiu Yanba narrowed his eyes and was about to take a step forward when a voice rang out behind him. Yanba? Su Peijian narrowed her eyes and looked at the two people in front of her. She came late and only heard the last two sentences. Her eyes darted back and forth between the two of them. Her woman's intuition told her that these two people were not simple. Chief Cho, please do as you wish. I'll go in first. After saying that, Su Qingsang nodded slightly at the two of them and turned to leave. Qiu Yanba narrowed his eyes and turned to look at Su Peijian. His face was expressionless, and it was impossible to tell whether he was happy or angry. Chapter 257. Qiu Yanba paused and looked at Su Peijian. I don't know what you're talking about. Are you feeling guilty? Do you think I can't tell? Su Peijian's low voice was filled with anger. Your eyes are almost glued to her. Is that so? Then you must be mistaken. Qiu Yanba was unmoved. Su Peijian was so angry that her face turned green. She glared at Qiu Yanba and stopped him from walking inside. Qiu Yanba, don't get one thing wrong. Su Qingsang is a married woman. So what? Qiu Yanba chuckled. I can still get a divorce after getting married. Do you think I care about that kind of thing? This was tantamount to a tacit agreement. Su Peijian felt her heart ache. She glared at the man in front of her, wishing she could stare two holes into his body. You want to break off the engagement with me because of her? Qiu Yanba, have you ever let me down? You're wrong about one thing. I didn't do it for her. I did it for myself. Qiu Yanba corrected her. Before I truly like someone, I don't think it matters who I marry. But now that he had someone he liked, he naturally wanted to marry the person he liked. Don't you agree? Ignoring Su Peijian's sour expression, Qiu Yanba entered the venue. Su Peijian bit her lips so hard that it almost broke. She stood there and clenched her fists tightly. His face turned from green to white, then from white to red. In the end, she stomped her feet angrily and followed him into the banquet hall. In the banquet hall, Su Qingsang had returned to Hua Jinyao's side. He was standing with Li Junsheng. The two men were equally tall and handsome. They were two different types of handsome men, and they looked very pleasing to the eye. People who didn't know the inside story would think that Tianyu Group and Hua Jinyao were powerful. The new mayor had only been here for a few months, but their relationship was already so good. However, Su Qingsang clearly knew that the two of them were childhood friends. Hello, little sister-in-law. Li Junsheng was used to being polite, so he took the initiative to greet Su Qingsang when he saw her. Hello. Hua Jinyao's friend was naturally her friend as well. She had to give him some face. Jinyao really went and married such a beautiful wife. Li Junsheng said half jokingly and half seriously, it's a pity that we're still alone at our age. How pitiful. Don't you dare. There were many people in Rong City who wanted to get close to the Li family. Now that such a young mayor had come to Lin City, the wealthy ladies in Lin City were even more tempted. If you really find it hard to sleep alone, I don't mind introducing a few people to you. No. Li Junsheng waved his hand. I'm not interested. Hua Jinyao smiled. Li Junsheng was ambitious. He was not the kind of person who would be trapped by love. Being a mayor was not his ultimate goal. After bypassing this layer, he didn't say anything more. Halfway through the banquet, almost all the guests had arrived. At this moment, the MC went up on stage to liven up the atmosphere. What he said was nothing more than to thank everyone for their support for Tianyu Group. Then, he invited Hua Jinyao onto the stage. Hua Jinyao went on stage and said a few welcoming words. He also thanked the companies for their trust and willingness to cooperate with him. It was a very ordinary speech, and the audience applauded. Before the applause stopped, Hua Jinyao suddenly reached out his hand to Su Qingsang with a faint smile on his face. At this moment, the light shone on Su Qingsang. She was a little surprised and didn't understand what Hua Jinyao wanted to do. Chapter 258. In fact, I invited everyone here today to thank you for your support during the time when Tianyu came to Lin City. I also want to introduce someone to everyone. As Hua Jinyao spoke, Su Qingsang had already walked up to him. He took her hand and let her face the crowd with him. He held Su Qingsang's hand tightly. I think everyone already knows this person, but I still want to introduce her again. This is my wife, Su Qingsang. Please take care of her in the future. He didn't say anything more, but the rest of the people knew what he meant. This person was Hua Jinyao's wife. Hua Jinyao had made it very clear what other people's attitudes would be in the future. There were whispers under the stage, but these whispers and looks wouldn't affect Hua Jinyao at all. As he spoke, he didn't forget to glance at the Su family indifferently. There was a smile in his eyes, but the meaning was quite obvious. Su Qingsang was under his protection. If the Su family wanted to do anything in the future, they would have to think twice. Su Qinghui didn't look good, and Su Peijian looked even worse. Even Li Qianxue, who was usually calm and composed, furrowed her brows. She didn't expect Hua Jinyao to care so much about Su Qingsang, an illegitimate daughter. This was beyond her expectations. Qiu Yanba also didn't look good. He didn't care about how others looked at him. However, Hua Jinyao's attitude and Su Qingsang's shocked and touched looks suddenly made him unhappy. The music started, and then it was time for the ball. Su Qingsang was brought to the dance floor by Hua Jinyao. I don't dance very well. Although she had learned, she was really not good at it. It's okay. I'll lead you. Hua Jinyao didn't mind at all. He led her around the dance floor. Su Qingsang looked up at him. Did you think of that in advance? Of course. He had to let the ignorant people in Lin City know who he was protecting. Actually, you don't have to do this. What's wrong? Don't you like it? He knew that the Su family liked to make things difficult for her. She thought he didn't know about the last call, but he knew very well. He had to teach these people a lesson. I'm fine. Thank you. Su Qingsang smiled at him. She didn't care about other people's opinions. She didn't care about the attitude of the Su family for a long time, but Hua Jinyao's action still made her feel very touched. You're welcome. You're my wife. This is what I should do. Hua Jinyao leaned close to her ear as he spoke. Compared with verbal thanks, I hope you can give me some tangible thanks. The corners of Su Qingsang's mouth twitched. Looking at Hua Jinyao's face, she almost understood what he meant. Wife. I'm telling the truth, Hua Jinyao said in a very low voice with an expectant look on his face. I've always hoped that you could take the initiative for once. Do you want to try it tonight? Hua Jinyao. He was never serious. Even on such an occasion. Su Qingsang didn't want to talk to him anymore. Just as the music ended, she took a step back and smoothly got out of his arms. Honey, don't be in such a hurry to leave. I still have a show to do. What program? Su Qingsang was confused, but Hua Jinyao took her hand and led her outside. Chapter 259. When Su Qingsang went out, a waiter brought her the coat that she had just taken off. Hua Jinyao put it on her. Naturally, it wouldn't be cold in the villa. However, it was windy outside, and it was a little chilly. Su Qingsang tightened her coat. Seeing this, Hua Jinyao reached out and put his arm around her waist. The heat from his body made her feel cold all of a sudden. He showed her around the villa. Su Qingsang didn't notice when she came in just now. Only now did she realize that the garden outside was terrifyingly big. The wide lawn was dotted with small white night lights, and it didn't look too dark. Against the faint starlight above her head and the faint music coming from inside, everything looked quiet and beautiful. They walked around the main body of the villa to the back and found that there was a super large swimming pool inside. Swimming pool? Su Qingsang's eyes widened. Wasn't this the same configuration as the Hua family's? Although it was a little smaller than the Hua family's, it was still very nice. There's a greenhouse and a small forest in the back. I asked someone to put a swing chair in it. In the future, when you have nothing to do, you can sit on it and read, or invite friends over for afternoon tea. Su Qingsang blinked her eyes, and it took her a few seconds to understand what Hua Jinyao meant. What do you mean by in the future? Don't tell me that this villa is yours. Su Qingsang's shocked and dazed look was really cute. Hua Jinyao was happy and leaned over to kiss her on the lips. This villa isn't mine. It's yours. Su Qingsang's mouth opened into an O shape. What did you say? I said, this villa is yours. Hua Jinyao squeezed her little hand, glanced around, and then looked away. I bought this place not long after I married you. It was just renovated last month. I was planning to give it to you as a wedding gift. Su Qingsang was obviously shocked by his words. Wedding gift? There's no need for that, right? We've been married for a long time. Yes. We've been married for a long time. A few months wasn't a long time. Hua Jinyao held her hand and looked at her frightened face. He found it more and more amusing. I know we've been married for a long time. But I always felt that the previous wedding was too simple. I'm afraid you won't be willing to hold another wedding. So, after thinking about it, I think it's better to give you a wedding present. You don't have to give me this, do you? This is too exaggerated. Su Qingsang was really frightened. There are only two of us. We live in such a big house. Who's going to clean it? And don't you think it's space? And, before she could finish, Hua Jinyao had already kissed her lips. It was not a quick kiss, but a long, lingering kiss. Until she couldn't speak at all, and couldn't breathe. Looking at her blushing face and snuggling into his arms, Hua Jinyao said softly, if it's cleaning, just hire someone. If you have time, you can have a few more children in the future. If he still felt lonely, he could hold a banquet at home and invite people over to play. These are all trivial matters. Su Qingsang blushed. She seemed to have asked a stupid question. I still think it's too exaggerated. A mansion as a wedding present? Although she knew that he was rich, she was not used to this kind of spending. Chapter 260. Stop. Su Qingsang couldn't take it anymore. She needed some time to digest everything that had happened today. She looked up at Hua Jinyao and asked, Hua Jinyao, why are you so nice to me? Silly, that's it? Hua Jinyao pulled her into his arms and lowered his head to kiss her lips. You're my wife. If I don't treat you well, who should I treat well? Don't worry. I will treat you better in the future. Su Qingsang leaned against his heart, unable to say a word. What happened? Hua Jinyao looked down at her and found that she didn't look happy. He was confused. Don't you like it? We'll go and see the others tomorrow. No. It's not that I don't like it. Su Qingsang shook her head. She reached out and put her arms around Hua Jinyao's waist. I just feel a little touched. Fool. Hua Jinyao rubbed the top of her head. Then I'll definitely give you more things in the future to make you more touched. Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang looked up at him with a serious and focused gaze. Actually, you don't have to do this. That's not what I want. Wife? It's fine as long as the house is big enough, but not too big. Don't ask for too much money, just enough to spend. I'm very happy that you gave me a gift and took the trouble to let everyone in Lin City know me, but I still hope that the two of us can live a simple life. Okay? All right. I'll listen to you. Hua Jinyao smiled gently. Su Qingsang felt her heart beating fast. It was warm and made her feel very comfortable. Hua Jinyao didn't force her to accept it. He also gave her time to adapt to her new identity. She raised her head and leaned in to kiss his lips again. This time, Hua Jinyao took the initiative and held her waist tightly. The lights in the back garden were not very bright, but the two figures looked quite beautiful in the night. Qiu Yanba, who was standing in the corner, narrowed his eyes as he watched the two of them kissing. "You don't like it, do you?" A very soft voice rang in his ear. Qiu Yanba turned around and found that Su Peijian had also come out. She had also seen that scene. Qiu Yanba frowned slightly and was about to leave. Before he could take more than 2 steps, Su Peijian blocked his way. "Do you feel bad? Are you feeling unwell?" Unfortunately, it was too late. "She's married." Her voice was one of schadenfreude that had never been heard before. That jealous look had completely lost her usual calmness, and she did not have the bearing of the eldest daughter of the Su family. "You don't look good like this." Qiu Yanba looked at Su Peijian's face. Naturally, she was also very beautiful. It would not be an exaggeration to describe her as bright and moving. But now that he saw this face, he was a little unhappy. "If I don't look good, you won't look any better." Qiu Yanba. She didn't want to disturb the other people in the room, so she lowered her voice. "What do you want?" Hua Jinyao is not someone you can afford to offend, and Tianyu Group is not something you can easily deal with now. You don't have to worry about what I want to do for now. I also want to say this to you. Hua Jinyao's attitude today had explained everything. You should know better. Su Peijian's face darkened. What Hua Jinyao did today was a slap in the face to the Su family. Chapter 261. She didn't hate Su Qingsang for hooking up with Hua Jinyao. She also didn't hate Hua Jinyao for publicly spoiling Su Qingsang. But Su Qingsang shouldn't have hooked up with Qiu Yanba. Su Peijian's eyes flashed with anger as her nails dug into her flesh. Qiu Yanba didn't want to pay attention to her. He turned around and left. Before he left, he glanced at the two of them kissing. Different from the anger in Su Qingsang's eyes, he was thinking about something else. There was still time. He wasn't in a hurry. Some people couldn't sleep that night. In addition to Su Peijian and Qiu Yanba, He Xiankai and He Xianyao also couldn't sleep. The He family had also come to Lin City to open a company and had cooperated with Tianyu Group before. But this time, Tianyu Group's banquet didn't invite He Xiankai and He Xianyao. Not only did they not invite them, but the cooperation project was already in the bag. But Hua Jinyao came to the bidding and ended up cooperating with the Su family. Hua Jinyao married Su Qingsang, so it was normal for him to cooperate with the Su family. But for the He family, it was a sign of their attitude. Not to mention He Xianyao, even He Xiankai didn't feel comfortable. One had to know that they also had a relationship with Li Junsheng. Hua Jinyao was so close to Li Junsheng, but he didn't give the He family any face. It was beyond the He siblings' expectations. Brother. He Xianyao saw some photos posted on WeChat Moments and her face turned green with anger. Why was Su Qingsang in the limelight? Why was Hua Jinyao so nice to her? Don't you understand? He Xiankai frowned. He regretted helping his sister set Hua Jinyao up last time. You offended Hua Jinyao last time. What did I do? Didn't I also? He Xianyao didn't finish her sentence. Brother, what should we do? Are we really going to let Brother Jinyao and that woman stay together like this? What else? He Xiankai knew what his sister was thinking and sighed. Don't mess around. Father is already very unhappy that the cooperation project didn't go through. If we really offend Hua Jinyao, I can't guarantee what will happen next. He Xianyao didn't speak, but her face showed some reluctance. No matter what, she had to try. Whether it was Hua Jinyao or the position of the young mistress of the Hua family. Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao stayed in the villa today. The largest bedroom on the second floor was Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang's room. Su Qingsang went upstairs and found that she liked both the decoration and the furnishings inside. Especially the semicircular balcony. It was super big, with a rattan coffee table and 2 sofas outside. On the side, there was a flower stand with a few pots of small green plants. Sitting on the sofa, he could see the swimming pool in the backyard. All the guests had left. When Hua Jinyao went upstairs, he saw Su Qingsang sitting on the sofa. He walked up and put his arm around her waist. "What are you looking at? Aren't you cold?" "It's okay." Su Qingsang turned to look at him. "The guests are all gone. Let's go." Hua Jinyao pinched her cheek. He couldn't bear to let go of her delicate and smooth skin. "Are you tired?" "I'm not tired." Compared to continuous surgeries, tonight was really not tiring. "Aren't you tired?" Hua Jinyao nodded. "It's getting late. Do you want me to prepare the water for you to bathe?" Chapter 262. Hua Jinyao quickly filled the tub and came out. Su Qingsang was about to get up, but he suddenly reached out and picked her up. Su Qingsang was startled and quickly put her arms around his neck. "What are you doing?" "I'm bathing with you. I can also try the jacuzzi that I asked people to install." "No." Su Qingsang shook her head. This guy had never taken a bath with her before. "Be good. We have to save water." Hua Jinyao didn't allow her to refuse and carried her into the bathroom. "Hua Jinyao. I'm tired." How could he have the cheek to talk about saving water? God knew that they couldn't save water if they took a bath together. They would only use more, okay? "You just said you weren't tired." "It's okay. I'll only do it once." "I said it wrong. I'm tired. Be good. Just once." Hua Jinyao's voice disappeared behind the bathroom. Soon, only the sound of water could be heard. As for Su Qingsang's protest, it disappeared in the sound of water. At the same time, a plane from Rong City to Lin City slowly landed. When Su Qingsang got up in the morning, Hua Jinyao was no longer in the room. She got up and walked to the cloakroom attached to the room. It was similar to Hua Jinyao's room in Rong City, but a size smaller. Compared to her small apartment, it was still very big. There were clothes in the cloakroom that Hua Jinyao had asked people to prepare for her in the morning, all year round. Su Qingsang looked at it for a while, then picked out a relatively casual outfit and put it on. After washing up, she went downstairs. In the past, every time Hua Jinyao swam in the Hua family, she would practice boxing with old Master Hua. This time, she could finally stand by the pool and watch Hua Jinyao swim. She had to say that Hua Jinyao's swimming posture was very handsome and standard. The morning sun shone on his body, dyeing his wheat-colored skin with a layer of gold. She knew that the Hua family had a gym. No wonder Hua Jinyao had such a good figure. He was indeed a very self-disciplined person. No matter how late he slept last night, he would definitely get up early the next day. Not only did he get up early, but he also insisted on exercising every day. The weather was getting colder, and the morning sun was not very strong. She sat down by the pool and watched Hua Jinyao swim. Suddenly, she felt that the years were peaceful and good. Thinking about how well Hua Jinyao had treated her during this period of time, she thought that it would be okay to spend the rest of her life with this man, right? At least when she thought of that kind of life, she actually had some faint expectations in her heart. Hua Jinyao's figure suddenly appeared by the pool. He reached out and pulled her body into the pool with ease. "Ah!" Su Qingsang cried out. She didn't know how to swim. How could Hua Jinyao let her sink into the water? He held her body tightly, not letting her sink into the water. At the same time, he lifted her up. "Peeking at your man for so long?" Who peeped?" Su Qingsang blushed. "I didn't." "Yes, indeed. There's no need to peek. You are my wife. You can watch it openly. Then tell me, is it nice? What's there to see?" Su Qingsang was very stubborn. If it's not nice, why did you look at it for so long? Hua Jinyao held her and slightly loosened his grip, as if he was going to throw her into the water. It's nice, it's nice. Su Qingsang was afraid of him. Don't let go. I don't know how to swim. You don't know how to swim? That's good. I'll teach you. As Hua Jinyao spoke, he hugged her tightly. Su Qingsang had been in the water and felt a little cold, but after being hugged like this, she didn't feel cold anymore. Stop it. I'm not wearing a swimsuit. Let go of me first. Her hands clung tightly to his shoulders. Hua Jinyao looked at her like this. Her hair was wet, and her clothes were sticking to her body. Chapter 263. Su Qingsang looked at Su Peijian, who was sitting in front of her. She didn't understand why she was looking for her. Today was Monday, and there were many patients. She had been busy the whole morning. She wanted to go to dinner soon, but Su Peijian came to see her. Su Peijian had been sitting across from her for a while. She didn't say anything and just stared at her. Su Qingsang felt a little uncomfortable. She cleared her throat and said, "Have you eaten? Let's eat together if you haven't." She remembered that this coffee shop had simple meals. She wanted to finish eating quickly before going back to work in the afternoon. Su Peijian still didn't say anything. Her eyes fell on Su Qingsang's neck. There were 2 big marks there. She wasn't an ignorant girl. She knew what they were. Su Qingsang felt more and more uncomfortable under her gaze. When she realized where she was looking, she felt embarrassed again. It was all Hua Jinyao's fault. He said that he wanted her to spend the holidays in the villa, but in fact, he just wanted to do whatever he wanted with her over the weekend. However, she was touched by him introducing her to everyone and giving her gifts. She couldn't bear to refuse. In the end, she was exhausted to death. Today, she saw the marks on her neck before going to work. In fact, she had already worn a scarf when she went out. However, after seeing patients and pregnant women all morning, she felt hot and took off the scarf. She was a little embarrassed to be stared at by Su Peijian like this. She said again, "What's the matter?" "Su Qingsang, you've lived in the Su family for so many years, but I didn't know you were so powerful." Su Peijian's words were full of sarcasm. She looked at the marks and then moved her eyes to Su Qingsang's face. Her face was an eyesore. "You're already married, but you still hook up with Yanba. Su Qingsang, don't you think you're shameless?" Su Qingsang's face darkened. She looked at Su Peijian with a faint anger on her face. "If you came to me today to make unreasonable accusations, then I'm sorry, I have something to do." As she spoke, she stood up. Su Peijian stood up as well. "Am I wrong? Yanba and I were fine. It was because of you that Yanba broke off the engagement with me." You're wrong." Su Qingsang interrupted her rudely. "What happened between you and Xiao Yanba has nothing to do with me. If you insist on saying it's because of me, I've been in the Su family for so long, and nothing has happened between me and Xiao Yanba. To put it bluntly, it's just a problem among yourselves." Su Qingsang. "Did I say something wrong?" Su Qingsang's bright future wouldn't take the blame. "You can eat more, but you can't talk nonsense. If there were no problems between you and Xiao Yanba, no one would be able to get involved. If there was a problem between the 2 of you, the result would be the same without the intervention of others. You're also a smart person. I don't need to tell you this, do I? Are you lecturing me?" "I wouldn't dare," Su Qingsang said calmly. "I just want to reason with you." "Su Qingsang, don't be too proud. Do you believe that I can make you lose everything?" "I believe you." Su Qingsang nodded. She believed that the Su family had that kind of ability, and she also believed that Su Peijian could do what she said. "But so what? Even if you make me lose everything, the truth is the truth." Okay. Su Peijian nodded. Are you saying that you won't admit your mistake? Chapter 264. Su Qingsang, I didn't know you were so powerful. It seems that I underestimated you before. You were pretending in the Su family, weren't you? Su Peijian really hated herself for being blind. How could she believe that Su Qingsang was innocent? Pretending? What do you mean pretending? Su Qingsang raised her eyebrows. She didn't want to admit to the accusation. I just wanted to avoid trouble. I still say the same thing. If you have a problem with Qiu Yanba, go to him. Don't come to me. Su Peijian's face darkened. She didn't expect Su Qingsang to be so stubborn. Su Qingsang didn't want to pay attention to Su Peijian. She had a clear conscience. She walked away quickly, leaving Su Peijian sitting there with obvious hatred in her eyes. Su Qingsang didn't take it to heart. Su Peijian had been spoiled by Su Qinghui and his wife since she was a child. She just couldn't stand that Qiu Yanba didn't love her anymore. She believed that she would understand when she met a better man. On the way back to the hospital, Su Qingsang bought herself a snack. There was no lunch in the cafeteria because of the delay. When she was near the hospital, she walked a little fast and almost bumped into someone. She steadied herself and took a step back. Sorry. She apologized first. When she saw the person in front of her, she was stunned. Auntie, it's you? Xiang Caiping's eyes were a little misty. She looked at Su Qingsang with excitement. Su Qingsang felt a little uncomfortable. Auntie, are you okay? Didn't I bump into you? Xiang Caiping was speechless. She had been in Lin City for a few days. It took her a lot of effort to find out Su Qingsang's whereabouts without alerting the Su family. She wanted to come and find her in the morning. However, she was old and in poor health. Her lower back still hurt from the fall last time. When she arrived, she found out that Su Qingsang had gone out for lunch. She was vexed and regretful. She should have come earlier. Maybe she could have had lunch with her daughter. Auntie? Su Qingsang was scared by her stare. She called out again, Auntie, why are you here? Aren't you in Rong City? I. Xiang Caiping's voice was a little agitated. I'm here for you. Looking for me? Su Qingsang frowned. She was there when Hua Jinyao bumped into Xiang Caiping. She also saw that Xiang Caiping didn't get hit at all. She fell on her own. After that, she continued to care about this matter. She asked Hua Jinyao about it, and he said that everything was settled. He even gave Xiang Caiping 100,000 yuan. He didn't expect that she would come to Lin City. Su Qingsang's expression was a little strange. Auntie, what's the matter? Xiang Caiping was still thinking about what to say when she saw the lunchbox in Su Qingsang's hand. You haven't had lunch yet? Then, why don't we have a meal together? Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment. The way the person in front of her didn't play by the rules made her even more wary. He only hesitated for a moment. Sure. Auntie, what do you want to eat? I'm fine with anything. I'm fine with anything. Xiang Caiping's voice was cautious. Su Qingsang was even more guarded. However, he still brought Xiang Caiping to a restaurant next to the hospital. The price was not high. Because it was close to the hospital, the price was cheap, and the business was quite good. It was already past lunchtime, and there weren't many customers inside. Su Qingsang sat down with Xiang Caiping and ordered for her. While waiting for the dishes to be served, she looked at Xiang Caiping and asked again. Chapter 265. The weather in Lin City was getting colder. Of course, it was not as cold as Rong City. Xiang Caiping was wearing a woolen coat. She seemed to be afraid of the cold. There were some fine lines at the corners of her eyes. When she saw the confusion in Su Qingsang's eyes, she rubbed her hands together. He seemed a little embarrassed to speak. Seeing her like this, Su Qingsang wasn't in a hurry to tell her. Auntie, if you don't want to tell me now, you can eat first. Let's talk after dinner. She wasn't in a hurry to ask what difficulties the other party might have. Xiang Kaiping did not expect Su Qingsang to be so considerate. Tears welled up in her eyes again. It was obvious that Su Qingsang had a good upbringing. She breathed a sigh of relief. That man seemed to take good care of Su Qingsang. The food was soon served. Su Qingsang found that Hua Jinyao barely ate meat, only vegetables. She didn't ask any more questions. The two of them ate quietly. During the meal, Su Qingsang thought of sending Hua Jinyao a message to let him know, but then she felt that she could handle this kind of thing, so it was unnecessary. After the meal, it was getting late. Su Qingsang glanced at the time. She still had about 20 minutes before she had to go to work. Auntie, can you say what you want to say first? I have to go to work later. Xiang Kaiping had just put down the bowl. Her hands trembled when she heard Su Qingsang's words. He seemed to have made up his mind. Xiang Kaiping stared at Su Qingsang's face and spoke very softly. I know your name is Su Qingsang, and you're 25 years old. Your birthday is on the 26th of December, the day after Christmas. Your father is Su Qinghui, you. Su Qingsang's expression slowly changed. She stared at Xiang Kaiping defensively. What are you trying to say? Why do you know all this? These things were not secrets. A little investigation would reveal the truth. However, why did Xiang Kaiping want to investigate these things? Don't be afraid, I'm not a bad person. I'm really not a bad person. Xiang Kaiping waved her hand. There seemed to be a hint of urgency on her wrinkled face. Qingsang, I am your mother. Su Qingsang's hand, which was about to reach for her phone, paused, and her phone fell back into her bag. She glared at the woman in front of her, her eyes full of suspicion and wariness. What did you say? I'm really your mother. I also know that you were born at 9 in the morning. You weighed 6 catties and 8 tails when you were born. Stop. Su Qingsang raised her hand, blinked, and tried to calm down. You said that I'm your daughter? Are you my mother? Yes. So you mean, you and my father, Su Qinghui, she didn't know what to say after that, but the situation in front of her was obviously something she hadn't expected. Yes. I was once Su Qinghui's lover. Xiang Kaiping gave Su Qingsang a definite answer, but Su Qingsang couldn't believe it. She couldn't help but look at Xiang Kaiping again. She looked to be in her 50s. There were fine lines at the corners of her eyes, and her face was a little yellow. His hair was also a little gray. Even so, it could still be seen from her facial features that she should have been pretty when she was young. However, Su Qingsang couldn't accept that she was her biological mother so easily. Firstly, she couldn't find anything similar to herself in Gu Shizhou. Secondly, she couldn't believe that the woman in front of her used to be Su Qinghui's mistress. Yes, Su Qinghui was married to Li Qianxue. Su Peijian was born before her. The woman in front of him could only be the mistress between Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue. Chapter 266. However, even if the woman in front of her was Su Qinghui's mistress, Su Qingsang couldn't believe it. Who was Su Qinghui? He was the general manager of the Li family. He had been in a high position for many years and lived like a prince. People would believe him if he said he was only 40 years old. As for Li Qianxue, she was well-maintained, elegant, and had a natural air of nobility about her. She looked at most 30 years old. Even if Su Peijian didn't like Su Qinghui and his wife, she knew the difference between Li Qianxue and Xiang Kaiping. Under such circumstances, how could Su Qingsang believe that Su Qinghui would have anything to do with such a woman? It didn't make sense. Xiang Kaiping was a little anxious. You can ask your father. Your father knows. He knows. I told him, at that time we. She paused, as if she was a little embarrassed to talk about her past. After thinking for a while, she took out a photo from her pocket and put it in front of Su Qingsang. I have a photo of you when you were a child. It's normal that you don't believe me because you don't look like me. You look like your father. I didn't know about you until then. Su Qingsang looked at the photo. She could tell that it was from a long time ago. The baby in the photo looked very small, and his facial features did look like Su Qinghui. Xiang Kaiping also took out another photo of her and Su Qinghui together. In this photo, Su Qinghui was much younger and looked more like the baby in the swaddling clothes. Xiang Kaiping didn't look like this in the photo either. She looked very young, gentle, and beautiful, like a girl from Jiangnan. There was another photo of Su Qinghui alone, and this one looked more like him. She had to admit that Su Qinghui was really a handsome guy when he was young. You really looked like your father when you were a child. However, your facial features have grown up. They are similar, but not as similar as when you were a child. Xiang Caiping's hand gently touched the two photos. I was too angry at that time. So I burned some of the photos, and now there are only these two left. As for your photo, there was only one. Su Qingsang noticed that there was a tear mark on the top of the photo. She must have planned to tear it up at that time. However, she didn't tear it up later and kept it. I was the one who gave you your name. At that time, your father said to call her Zijin. Indigo collar, my heart is free. I said that if this name was pronounced in Lin City's dialect, it wouldn't sound good. I said that it would be better to call it Qingqing. Su Qingqing. But your dad thinks it's too ordinary. Then, he saw a mulberry tree at the entrance. I said, why don't you call her Qingsang? Because that mulberry tree is where your father and I pledged our love. It was the first time that Su Qingsang had heard about the origin of her name. Looking at the photo, Su Qingsang believed most of it. But she still had her doubts. If you're my mother, why didn't you acknowledge me earlier? Why don't you live with me? At this point, Xiang Caiping's eyes reddened again, and tears flowed from the corners of her eyes. She looked completely different from Li Qianxue. Although she was old, when she cried, she really looked like a willow in the wind. Su Qingsang felt like she was bullying her when she heard Su Qingsang cry like that. In his heart, he trusted her a little more. Chapter 267. I'm sorry. Xiang Kaiping sniffled. She took out a tissue and wiped her tears. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Don't rush. Tell me slowly. It had been so many years, and the resentment and distress in Su Qingsang's heart had almost dissipated. Your father wanted to marry Li Qianxue. I couldn't help it. I was pregnant. I was going to have an abortion, but I didn't want to. Later, the doctor said that I was in poor health. If I had an abortion, I might not have another child. I didn't dare to have an abortion. When I gave birth to you, your father had already married Li Qianxue. I felt bitter in my heart. Because I was angry that he married someone else, I threw the child to him. I thought that he was better off than me at the time. Maybe he would take good care of you for the sake of our past friendship. Su Qingsang didn't speak. Xiang Kaiping was obviously emotional. She repeated the words, and the process was not smooth. Qingsang, I'm actually not a mistress. Your father and we met first. Really? But later, Why did he marry Li Qianxue? Although Su Qingsang wasn't often in the Su family, she had seen a lot of them growing up. Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue were a couple on the surface. They pretended to be respectful in front of outsiders, but they didn't have a good relationship in private. Why did she know? She had seen them once or twice when she was young. Li Qianxue was like a hedgehog in front of Su Qinghui. As for Su Qinghui, he didn't look like a gentleman at all. Instead, he was indifferent. Every time Su Qinghui had an argument with Li Qianxue would look at her colder than before. It's already like this. When I left, I also felt that I was too ashamed to see you. But I didn't expect to hear your name on TV. I hadn't thought about whether to look for you or not, but I met you on the road. Qing sang, I know it may be difficult for you to accept me for a while. Or you think I'm a liar. I'm not a good mother. But I'm really your mother. Xiang Kaiping said a lot. Su Qingsang couldn't bear to see her like that. He took out a tissue and handed it to her, signaling her to stop crying. Okay, I believe you are my mother. Then. Xiang Caiping's gaze suddenly became hopeful. You believe me? You're willing to acknowledge me? Give me some time. Su Qingsang glanced at the watch on her wrist. I have to go to work. Are you staying in a hotel or hotel? I'm staying at a hotel nearby. Do you know the way? Why don't you return to the hotel first? Wait till I get off work. We'll talk about it later. Okay. Xiang Kaiping quickly wiped away her tears. She was crying and laughing at the same time. She looked very emotional. Su Qingsang couldn't bear it anymore. She did not want to criticize such a person too much. Su Qingsang didn't insist on driving Xiang Kaiping to the hotel. She went to work first. She has 2 operations in the afternoon. Although they were minor surgeries, they successfully diverted her attention and made her temporarily forget about this matter. It was only when she was about to leave work that she remembered Xiang Caiping's existence. She was still hesitating about whether to go to the hotel to check on her when she saw Xiang Kaiping sitting on a bench at the entrance of the hospital, waiting for her. Qing sang, you're off work? Xiang Kaiping stood up. Her face was a little red. She didn't know how long she had waited. Chapter 268. Nope. I just got here too. Xiang Kaiping rubbed her hands together. I just wanted to see if you got off work. Su Qingsang sighed in her heart. Where is your hotel? Let me send you back. The hope in Xiang Caiping's eyes dimmed. Su Qingsang added, I'll take you to get your luggage, and then you can come home with me. Xiang Caiping's eyes lit up again. Qingsang, you, since you are my mother. But there's no reason for you to stay in a hotel. I have another room there, but it's not very big. I hope you won't mind. I don't mind. Xiang Kaiping waved her hand, the smile on her face growing brighter. Su Qingsang didn't know what to say. She followed Xiang Kaiping to the hotel and packed her luggage. He brought her home. It wasn't that she didn't have any doubts, but the more she suspected, the more she wanted to confirm it. Xiang Kaiping didn't say anything, but the ardent look in her eyes made Su Qingsang feel that she could accept her, which made her very happy. No amount of harsh words could be said at this time. She brought Xiang Kaiping home and settled her in the guest room. Although the guest room wasn't frequented, Shi Mengwan used to come here often. Therefore, there were matching blankets and sheets. Su Qingsang helped Xiang Kaiping with the quilt. Xiang Kaiping stood on the side and wanted to help. However, Su Qingsang asked her to sit down and didn't ask her to do anything. Qingsang, this house is yours. My father gave it to me, Su Qingsang explained calmly. He bought me this house after I got into college. Then I moved out. After the banquet the day before yesterday, Wu Jinyao wanted her to move to the villa, but she felt that it was too far away from work, so it wasn't convenient for her to refuse. Wu Jinyao didn't insist. After living here for a few months, he had gotten used to it. Moreover, this place was closer to his company. Xiang Kaiping looked at the house, and there was a hint of gratification in her eyes. Does he treat you well, too? Okay. Is buying a house good enough? Su Qingsang didn't know how to define it, so she didn't continue the topic. Auntie is cooking. You haven't had dinner yet, have you? No. Xiang Kaiping waved her hand. Did you hire an auntie? Is it expensive to hire a nanny here? Hua Jinyao invited him. I wonder if it's expensive. Every day she comes over to clean up the room and make dinner. Xiang Kaiping nodded and thought of the young man from last time. Hua Jinyao? The young man from last time? You're my husband. Su Qingsang's answer was much more natural. Xiang Kaiping recalled the time when Hua Jinyao had sent someone to treat her waist injury and the car he had driven. Is he rich? She asked. Su Qingsang was stunned. She didn't expect Xiang Kaiping to ask such a question. I'm okay. Don't think too much. I don't mean anything by it. I just care about you. Did your father introduce him to you? No. I found it myself. Xiang Kaiping nodded, and the two of them fell silent again. Xiang Kaiping wanted to say something but didn't dare to. Su Qingsang couldn't find anything to say. Su Qingsang had no experience in getting along with elders. Just then, Hua Jinyao came home. As soon as he came back, he heard from the maid that Su Qingsang had brought someone home. When Su Qingsang and Xiang Kaiping went out, Hua Jinyao put down the key and saw Xiang Kaiping. Sweetheart, this is. Hua Jinyao had a good memory. He almost immediately remembered that he had bumped into this woman in Rong City. Su Qingsang was thinking about how to explain. The maid had just finished cooking. Let's eat first. We'll talk after dinner. Chapter 269. The maid left after cooking. Only the three of them were left. Xiang Kaiping stood there without moving. She was already uncomfortable. She felt even more uncomfortable when she saw Hua Jinyao. Especially Hua Jinyao's gaze. But Xiang Kaiping really wanted to spend time with Su Qingsang. Let's eat, Hua Jinyao said first. He looked at Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang winked at him, indicating that they should eat first. The three of them sat down at the dining table. Su Qingsang picked up a bowl and filled it with soup. She thought about it and put it in front of Xiang Kaiping. Have some soup first. Thank you. Thank you. Su Qingsang looked at him and seemed a little helpless. You don't have to be so polite. Xiang Kaiping smiled a little awkwardly, but she couldn't help but glance at Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao ignored Xiang Kaiping. He put the soup in front of Su Qingsang and said, Honey, here you go. Su Qingsang took the bowl and smiled at him. The maid's cooking was good. She had 2 surgeries in the afternoon and was hungry. The meal was very quiet. Hua Jinyao, as usual, put food in Su Qingsang's bowl from time to time. Every time this happened, he could see that Xiang Caiping's eyes were especially gratified, as if she was very happy that Su Qingsang was doing well. Hua Jinyao pretended not to see it and did what he was supposed to do. After dinner, Xiang Kaiping insisted on washing the dishes. Su Qingsang couldn't stop her in time. After Xiang Kaiping put the bowls in the kitchen, Hua Jinyao took Su Qingsang to the living room and sat down. Su Qingsang briefly told him what happened. Hua Jinyao narrowed his eyes. Contrary to Su Qingsang's attitude, he felt that there was something fishy about this matter. Why didn't she come to claim it before? Su Qingsang explained to him in a low voice. Of course, this reason was actually reasonable. She was betrayed by her lover and abandoned her child in a rage. Hua Jinyao could understand, but he was a little uncomfortable. Do you want to hear the truth from me? Go ahead. You didn't look for her for so many years, but you came looking for her after a trip to Rome City. What is your motive? Su Qingsang blinked and looked at Hua Jinyao blankly. She almost immediately understood what he meant. Honey. Hua Jinyao moved closer to Su Qingsang, whispered in her ear, and told her his speculation. In the end, he looked at her face with a hint of heartache. Will you be unhappy if I tell you this? Su Qingsang shook her head. No, I know what you mean. One mustn't have the intention to harm others, but one mustn't not have the heart to guard against others. She understood this logic. After saying the worst-case scenario, Hua Jinyao was in the mood to tease her again. Speaking of which, you really have to be glad that there was a mulberry tree at the door. What if it's a wudong tree? Are you going to be called Xingtong now? Screw you. Su Qingsang's worries dissipated after hearing what Hua Jinyao said. She raised her hand and punched Hua Jinyao's chest. He clutched his chest and fell on the sofa with a pained expression. It hurts, it hurts. I was hit by an arrow. Stop messing around. He really was hit by an arrow. If you don't kiss me, I won't be able to get up. Hua Jinyao's acting was so real. Su Qingsang was about to lose to him. She had no choice but to lean over and kiss him on the cheek. Before she could retreat, she saw Xiang Kaiping, who had been washing the dishes in the kitchen, come out. Su Qingsang blushed and quickly sat up straight. At the same time, she touched Hua Jinyao's arm. Hua Jinyao also sat up. Compared with Su Qingsang's embarrassment, he was much calmer when he was caught being intimate with Su Qingsang. Chapter 270. Seeing how Hua Jinyao took care of her daughter, Xiang Kaiping was actually very pleased. She sat down on the sofa opposite Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang. She sat upright with her hands on her knees. For a moment, Su Qingsang thought she was looking at an ancient person. Auntie, you don't have to be so polite. She saw that Xiang Caiping's face was a little pale because she called her auntie, but Su Qingsang couldn't bring herself to call her mother. Hua Jinyao reached out to hold Su Qingsang's hand. Su Qingsang glared at him. However, he stubbornly held Su Qingsang's hand and wouldn't let go. When Su Qingsang was about to pull her hand back, he suddenly looked at Xiang Kaiping and said, Auntie, can I ask why it took you so long to recognize Qingsang? Su Qingsang had asked this question just now, but Hua Jinyao's tone and expression were completely different. He was full of vigor and his eyes were sharp. Although he didn't say it explicitly, it was clear that he wanted to protect Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang forgot to pull her hand back. Xiang Kaiping didn't expect Hua Jinyao to be so fierce, but she still tried her best to explain. I feel sorry for her, and I don't want to disturb her life. Then why are you disturbing her now? Hua Jinyao put his hand on Su Qingsang's shoulder and held Su Qingsang's hand tightly with the other. I heard Qingsang's name on TV last time, so I wanted to see her. Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qingsang with an eager expression. I want to see her, to know if she's doing well. I want to, you've seen her now. And then? Hua Jinyao interrupted her bluntly. Su Qingsang was a little surprised by his sharp attitude, but she didn't say anything to stop him. Xiang Caiping's lips trembled a little. She really wanted to see if her daughter was doing well before leaving. But after spending so much time with her, she began to feel that it wasn't enough. She wanted to make it up to her daughter, to spend more time with her daughter, and to give Su Qingsang the motherly love she had accumulated over the past 20 years. Maybe Su Qingsang didn't need it anymore, but she wanted to give it. She didn't speak, but Hua Jinyao could tell what Xiang Kaiping meant. His expression didn't change. Auntie, please forgive me for saying something unpleasant. You may have a good life, but have you ever thought about Qingsang? Qingsang, you've been living well. We're happy that you didn't show up. But your sudden appearance is undoubtedly a reminder to Qingsang that she is an illegitimate daughter, the child of a mistress. Isn't it? No, I didn't. Xiang Kaiping panicked and looked at Su Qingsang anxiously. For a moment, she didn't think about what Hua Jinyao meant by illegitimate daughter. I'm not a mistress. Qingsang, you have to believe me. She really wasn't a mistress. I met my father before the time. Li Qianxue came later. Xiang Kaiping was incoherent. She tried hard to explain herself. But he didn't know where to start. The story was too long, so long that she felt that she couldn't explain it clearly in 1 or 2 sentences. Su Qingsang was indeed very curious about what had happened back then. However, what Hua Jinyao said did make sense. Auntie. Hua Jinyao interrupted her. What happened in the past was not important at all. What was important was the grievance Su Qingsang had suffered all these years, and the pain she had suffered because of the word illegitimate daughter. Chapter 271. Hua Jinyao thought much more than Su Qingsang. I don't care if you're a mistress or not, and I don't want to know what happened back then. On the one hand, I just think that you've caused Qingsang a lot of trouble by coming here so rashly. On the other hand, you're the one who said everything. You have no evidence to prove that you're Qingsang's mother. In fact, we can say that you're not. I am. I really am. Xiang Kaiping was even more agitated than before. She stood up abruptly and looked at Su Qingsang without looking at Hua Jinyao. Qingsang, I'm really your mother. Please believe me. Since that's the case, let's do a paternity test. Hua Jinyao looked at Xiang Kaiping calmly, but his eyes were sharper than before. We believe the results of the DNA test. It couldn't be wrong. Don't you agree, Auntie? Yes, yes, yes. Xiang Kaiping nodded. Good. I know that one. Qingsang, when do you think we should do it? Her reaction was beyond Hua Jinyao's expectations. He couldn't help but glance at Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang was also a little surprised. Meeting Hua Jinyao's gaze, she shook her head gently. She turned to Xiang Kaiping and said, Auntie, don't worry. It was too late now. It was too late to do a paternity test. You should rest first. If there's anything else, we'll talk about it tomorrow after a good rest. Is that okay? All right. Sure. Xiang Kaiping still looked a little excited. Qingsang, I hope you can trust me. I really am your mother. Whether you want to do a paternity test, a blood test, or confront Su Qingwei face to face, I'm not afraid. I really just simply want to acknowledge you. Then what? Hua Jinyao's words were still not polite. Do you want Qingsang to support you? No, no, no. Xiang Kaiping waved her hands. I don't need her to take care of me, and I don't need you to. I'm rich. She had been living a simple life for the past few years. Other than hiring a housekeeper, she basically did not have many expenses. I have saved money. Don't worry. I won't let you raise me. You may not be interested in my property. But all these will be yours in the future. After saying this, Xiang Kaiping even thought of going to her room to get her bankbook and proof of her assets. I really have money. I can show it to you. Auntie. Su Qingsang stopped her. Don't be like this. That's not what I meant. If Xiang Kaiping was really her mother, her biological mother, she would definitely raise her. She's just. Xiang Kaiping stood there, not knowing what to do. Su Qingsang couldn't bear to see that. It made her feel like she was bullying an old man. Auntie, it's getting late. Go and rest. Let's talk about it tomorrow. Xiang Kaiping's lips moved. It was obvious that she had more to say, but in the end, she could only walk back to her room gloomily. The living room quieted down, and Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao returned to their room. The two of them didn't fool around like before. Su Qingsang sat on the edge of the bed and chuckled as she thought about what had happened that day. What's wrong? Didn't you say you wanted to take a shower? Hua Jinyao came out of the shower and happened to see her expression. He stepped forward and put his arm around her waist. As he spoke, he kissed her lips. Su Qingsang took a step back to avoid his kiss and put a hand on his chest. Chapter 272. She was referring to Xiang Caiping's appearance. All of it. Hua Jinyao stopped kissing her. He just held her hand and held it in his palm. I can't tell now. The paternity test couldn't be faked. If Xiang Caiping wasn't afraid of that could only mean two things. First, she was really Su Qingsang's mother. Second, she was so powerful that she could influence the paternity test agencies. But the situation in front of him was obviously the first one. So, she's really my mother? If she wasn't afraid of the paternity test, it couldn't be fake. Hua Jinyao turned his head to look at her face and found that she was expressionless. He seemed to understand her concerns. He gently lifted her body and put her in his arms. So what? You can do whatever you want. If you want to acknowledge her, then acknowledge her. If not, then don't. Could he do that? Su Qingsang was a little hesitant. That's right. Hua Jinyao's words were straightforward and simple. All these years, she hasn't done anything for you. Now, she suddenly came out and said that she wants to acknowledge you. It's normal for you to not want to acknowledge her. To say the least, even if she's your biological mother, she might have ulterior motives. There are many people in this world who set their parents up, but there are many who want to set their children up. There are many, right? What's her motive? Su Qingsang looked at him and thought of the same thing. But she didn't want to think of people so evil. I don't seem to have anything for her to want. Idiot. Hua Jinyao knocked her head. You have me. Thinking about it, Xiang Caiping's story was almost flawless. But her appearance was a flaw. She didn't acknowledge her earlier or later, but after Hua Jinyao revealed Su Qingsang's identity, Hua Jinyao didn't want to talk about conspiracy theories. But he had seen a lot of conspiracies over the years. Su Qingsang didn't speak. She was a smart person, so she naturally understood the key point. But, if the paternity test shows that she's really my mother, that's okay. Hua Jinyao knew that Su Qingsang had always been cold on the outside but warm on the inside, so he was very soft-hearted. If she's really your mother, then let her stay for now. Anyway, there's one more person to eat. It won't take much. As time passes, we'll naturally be able to see what she's planning. Su Qingsang nodded. That made sense. However, she said, what if she really doesn't want anything and just wants to acknowledge me? That's even simpler. Hua Jinyao rubbed the top of her head. Although I can't take care of her as my real mother right away, I can still take care of her. But we can get along with her first. As for the future, they could talk about it in the future. Su Qingsang figured it out and stopped thinking about it. Counter soldiers with arms and water with earth. Anyway, she was prepared for the worst. Her problem was solved. Hua Jinyao turned over and pressed her under his body. Su Qingsang quickly stepped aside and said, Stop it. I haven't showered yet. Wash it after you're done. No. As Su Qingsang spoke, she jumped up and quickly went to the bathroom. Hua Jinyao sighed silently. Everything about this wife was good, but she was too stubborn. When Su Qingsang entered the bathroom, the gentle smile on his face disappeared. He took out his phone and dialed a few numbers. Help me investigate a woman named Xiang Caiping. She's from Lin City and later moved to Rong City. Yes, I want all the information. The sooner, the better. After hanging up the phone, Hua Jinyao's face was a little serious. Su Qingsang was soft-hearted, but he wasn't. Chapter 273. Su Qingsang didn't sleep well that night. She had been dreaming the whole night. It was all about her childhood. She couldn't remember exactly how old she was, but she was very envious when she saw Su Peijian call Li Qianxue a mom. So one day, when she saw Li Qianxue sitting on the sofa, she walked up to her with her short legs and called her, Mom. However, this sound was like a bomb. Li Qianxue, who had been resting with her eyes half closed, suddenly opened her eyes wide. His sharp gaze swept over her face unceremoniously. "Who is your mother? Who are you calling mom?" Su Qingsang had never seen Li Qianxue like that. She was scared and didn't dare to move. Right at that moment, Su Peijian happened to come in. She heard it and rushed over, slapped her hard, and pushed her away. "Get out. You be *tch. This is my mom, not your mom." Su Qingsang fell to the ground. Su Peijian still felt that it wasn't enough. She took 2 steps forward and stared at her arrogantly. "You're just an illegitimate daughter that no one wants. My mom pitied you and let you stay at home. You'd better know who you are. This is my mom, not yours." Su Qingsang was shocked. She watched as the mother and daughter walked away. She never called her mother mother again. After Su Yusen was born, Li Qianxue and her son often sat in the garden when they were free. Su Peijian read a book while Li Qianxue coaxed Su Yusen. That scene was as beautiful as a painting, but she wasn't the person in the painting. She had a little desire for her mother when she was young, but because she couldn't melt into the painting, it slowly disappeared. "Wife? Wife?" Hua Jinyao woke up in the middle of his sleep. The person beside him seemed to be sleeping badly. He turned on the bedside lamp and found that Su Qingsang was crying. How could he sleep? He immediately woke up. "Wife? Wake up." Su Qingsang slowly opened her eyes. For a moment, she thought she was in a dream. She looked at Hua Jinyao in a daze. "Wife, what's wrong?" Hua Jinyao had been with Su Qingsang for a long time, but he had never seen her cry. The incident with Zhang Mei last time didn't count, but this was the first time that she cried while sleeping. Su Qingsang looked into Hua Jinyao's eyes and slowly woke up. She blinked and shook her head. "I'm fine. It was just a dream." "What dream?" Hua Jinyao asked. Seeing that she didn't say anything, he tightened his arms around her waist. "Dreams are all fake. Don't worry about it." Su Qingsang leaned against his chest and thought about her dream. She chuckled and said, "Forget it. It's not worth worrying about." Hua Jinyao knew that she didn't want to talk about it. He pecked her on the face and said, "Let's go to sleep then. It's still early." "Okay." Su Qingsang turned over, found a comfortable position in his arms, and closed her eyes. When Hua Jinyao thought that she was about to fall asleep, he suddenly heard Su Qingsang's soft voice. "Actually, it's good that she's my mother. It's really good. I've wanted a mother for a long time." Hua Jinyao, I believe, she didn't finish her sentence, but Hua Jinyao understood what she didn't finish her sentence. Looking at her sleeping face, a faint heartache welled up in his heart. The hand on her waist tightened a little, and he leaned over and kissed her on the lips. Su Qingsang was in a daze and almost fell asleep. Being kissed by him like this, she frowned again. But only for a moment, she turned over and continued to sleep. She was used to his arms and wouldn't wake up easily. Hua Jinyao's heart softened. Chapter 274. When Su Qingsang got up in the morning, Hua Jinyao was already up. She knew that he had to do morning exercises every day. After washing up, she left the room. She wanted to see if Xiang Kaiping had woken up, but when she smelled the aroma of food, she realized that Xiang Kaiping had already woken up. Not only did he wake up, he even prepared breakfast. Su Qingsang looked at the figure busy in the kitchen. For a moment, she really believed that Xiang Kaiping was her mother. Xiang Kaiping had already set the table for breakfast and happened to see Su Qingsang coming out. She rubbed her hands together uncomfortably. "I didn't mean to disturb your kitchen. I just want to cook for you." Seeing that Su Qingsang didn't move, Xiang Kaiping became more and more uncomfortable. "I don't know what you like to eat, so I made some porridge and side dishes according to Lin City's custom. I don't know if you'll like it." Su Qingsang couldn't tell what she was feeling. She had imagined this scene many times before, but when it actually came true one day, she couldn't believe it. Qingsang? Xiang Kaiping called her again, her expression cautious. It's okay. Su Qingsang shook her head. You don't have to be so polite. Hua Jinyao used to bring breakfast back when he came back from his morning exercises. I saw him. Xiang Kaiping was not young anymore, so she didn't sleep much. When I woke up this morning, I saw that he was going out. I told him not to buy breakfast. Su Qingsang was speechless. Soon, Hua Jinyao returned. Let's eat, Xiang Kaiping said carefully. Su Qingsang was not used to his attitude, as if he was afraid of upsetting Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao. I don't know if you want to eat. Xiang Kaiping looked at Hua Jinyao, feeling a little uncomfortable. She also knew that Hua Jinyao's family was not ordinary, but she was afraid that he would dislike it. Auntie, it's okay. I'm not picky. Xiang Kaiping seemed to have relaxed a little. Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao looked at each other, not knowing what to do with her attitude. After dinner, Xiang Kaiping volunteered to wash the dishes. It was too late for Su Qingsang to stop her. By the time Su Qingsang was ready to go to work, Xiang Kaiping was already ready. Qingsang. Her tone was full of caution. Are we going to do a paternity test now? Su Qingsang glanced at Hua Jinyao, and he gave her a look. Su Qingsang thought about it and decided that there was nothing wrong with doing it now. Just as she was about to ask Xiang Kaiping to leave with her, Su Qingsang's phone rang. Dr. Su, the pregnant woman with diabetes that you picked up yesterday fell into a coma this morning. The situation is not optimistic. How long have you been unconscious? I'll be right there. Su Qingsang knew about the pregnant woman. She had picked her up before she got off work yesterday. Her condition wasn't good. Su Qingsang asked the nurse on the other end of the phone to deal with the emergency. She hung up the phone and saw that Xiang Kaiping was still standing there, waiting for her. She couldn't care less about her now. Auntie, let's talk about the paternity test when I'm free. I need to go to the hospital now. Then you go first, I'll wait for you. I'll walk you out. Hua Jinyao had also finished packing. He glanced at Xiang Kaiping, then gave Su Qingsang a look. Su Qingsang followed him out of the door. The two of them got into the car, and Hua Jinyao didn't waste time talking to her. I had someone check it out yesterday. And? Su Qingsang looked at Hua Jinyao nervously. Chapter 275. Hua Jinyao had someone look into it last night. Within one night, the information was in his mailbox. Su Qingsang was stunned. She obviously didn't expect Hua Jinyao to act so quickly. We can confirm it without a paternity test, right? It should be true. Hua Jinyao thought about the information he had found. She and your father were indeed childhood sweethearts. They were innocent. Then why? If two people loved each other, why wouldn't they be together? Because of Li Qianxue. Hua Jinyao slightly frowned when he mentioned Li Qianxue. He thought about the information he had read. Speaking of this matter, it was not a secret. As long as one stayed in Lin City for a long time, they would be able to find out a little. Li Qianxue was old Master Li's only beloved daughter. When he was struggling in his career, his wife passed away because of overwork. He felt guilty in his heart and loved Li Qianxue dearly. He never remarried. Li Qianxue was the daughter of a wealthy family. She was a little arrogant. She entered the company early to help her father. Within 3 years, she was already a department manager. At that time, Su Qinghui was a small director of the Li Group. For some reason, Li Qianxue fell in love with Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui had a woman he liked, and that was Xiang Kaiping. The two of them had been talking about marriage. Unexpectedly, Su Qinghui accidentally had sex with Li Qianxue after a dinner party. The next day, Old Master Li caught the two of them having sex. What kind of family was the Li family at that time? The Su family was a well-off family. What kind of family was it? Not to mention that the Li family was almost the dominant family in Lin City at that time. It was easy to deal with a poor boy who didn't have much power. Su Qinghui originally wanted to fight to the end and refused to compromise. He didn't know that Li Qianxue happened to be pregnant. Now, Su Qinghui had to marry her. However, after Li Qianxue married him, he found out that Xiang Kaiping was also pregnant. In this way, Xiang Kaiping became a mistress. Xiang Kaiping couldn't stand such humiliation. She was Su Qinghui's lover, but he married someone else. Not only did he marry someone else, but he even had a child. At that time, Xiang Kaiping thought about aborting the child, but she was not in good health and couldn't have an abortion. She had no choice but to give birth, but she was only a child without a father. She thought of her own conditions and Su Qinghui's. In the end, Xiang Kaiping decided to give the child to Su Qinghui and let him raise it. As for herself, your mother is quite a formidable person. Perhaps Xiang Kaiping had been bullied by the Li family's rich family. In a fit of rage, she sold the house her parents had given her. He had gone to the north to do business. By doing so, she managed to make a name for herself. She had opened chain supermarkets in several cities in the north. But she was still a woman. No matter how good her business was, without her husband and daughter, she would still be alone. A few years ago, when she went out for a business meeting, she accidentally fell down. Over the years, he had been running around outside. As a woman, she had suffered a lot. After that fall, it took him half a year to fully recover. From then on, she left the business to someone else. He lived in seclusion and only hired an aunt to take care of her. Usually, he didn't go out much. Occasionally, he would check on the business. I think she came to acknowledge you purely because she wanted to acknowledge you. Chapter 276. Perhaps it was because Su Qingsang had lost her mother's love at a young age, but the expectation she had for a mother's love had almost disappeared as she grew older. She really didn't know how to deal with a person who claimed to be her mother. While they were talking, the car stopped at the entrance of the hospital. Hua Jinyao squeezed her hand before she got out of the car. Wife. Don't feel burdened. No matter what you decide, I will support you no matter what. Su Qingsang looked at him, felt the warmth of his palm, and felt that it was incomparably comfortable. It was rare for her to take the initiative and kiss the corner of his lips. Okay, I know. The moment she stepped back, she smiled and said, Hua Jinyao, thank you. In the past, she had never known that there was someone by her side who would always think of her, protect her, and respect her in everything. She believed that given time, she would definitely fall in love with him. Or, she had begun to slowly fall in love with him. The way she looked at Hua Jinyao was much gentler than in the morning. What are you thanking me for? Hua Jinyao squeezed her hand hard. You're my wife. Never say thank you to me. Su Qingsang nodded at him, then hurriedly got out of the car and went to the hospital. The pregnant woman's condition was particularly bad. Finally, they unanimously decided to have a cesarean section. Su Qingsang and Director Zhang entered the operating theater together. Perform a cesarean section on the pregnant woman. After the surgery, another pregnant woman jumped off a building. Her husband was a victim of domestic violence and infidelity. She was 8 months pregnant and jumped off a building with her unborn child. Su Qingsang didn't have time to blame her husband. Because the pregnant woman had jumped from the 5th floor, she had been blocked by the anti-theft window frame and the canopy downstairs, so the impact was mitigated. He didn't die on the spot, but the child didn't look too good. She didn't care about anything else. She followed Chief Zhang out of the operating room and into the operating room again. After several hours of resuscitation, the pregnant woman was finally pulled back from the brink of death, and the child was fine. When the pregnant woman knew that she was about to fall, she regretted it and used all her strength to protect the child in her belly, so the child was fine. The pregnant woman herself had broken her leg and one of her arms. The first thing he did when he woke up was not to care about his legs and hands, but to see his child. Knowing that the baby was fine, the pregnant woman burst into tears in the ward. Looking at that scene, Su Qingsang felt an inexplicable sourness in her heart. Ever since she chose obstetrics and gynecology, she had delivered hundreds of babies. Every time, he would be touched by the pregnant woman's actions. She couldn't help but think of Xiang Kaiping. Perhaps she had given birth to Su Qinghui with great expectations, but in the end, she had no choice but to send her back to Su Qinghui. At that time, she also hesitated for a long time, right? She thought that she could probably start looking for Xiang Kaiping now. When Hua Jinyao came to pick her up after work, he found that she was in a better mood. This change was very obvious. What's wrong? Did something good happen? Yes. Su Qingsang nodded. The smile on her face showed that she was in a good mood. I've decided. What did you decide? I will recognize her. She didn't say who she was, but Hua Jinyao knew. He smiled and reached out to shake her hand. Chapter 277. I don't think it's necessary. Su Qingsang sighed. I can understand her. Hua Jinyao nodded. Okay, we'll have another mother to show filial piety to in the future. Xiang Kaiping didn't look like the kind of person who would cause trouble. Hua Jinyao thought about the information he had gathered and didn't think there was anything wrong with it. Su Qingsang looked at Hua Jinyao, feeling touched. She moved her lips and suddenly realized that the word "thank you" was too soft. What? Hua Jinyao leaned over and pulled her into his arms. Did you suddenly realize that your husband is more handsome than the heavens? Do you think you found a treasure? Let's go. This man couldn't be serious in front of her for more than 3 minutes. Hua Jinyao leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. Yes, ma-am. When they got home, Xiang Kaiping was standing in front of the dining table. She seemed to have just served the soup. Seeing Su Qingsang come in, she rubbed her hands on her apron. You're back. Are you tired? The food is ready. I made it. Where's Sister Lu? Su Qingsang looked in the direction of the kitchen. Let Sister Lu do this kind of thing in the future. It's okay. I have nothing to do anyway. Xiang Kaiping looked at her nervously, thinking that Su Qingsang was angry. I just want to do something for you. I really don't mean anything else. Auntie. Su Qingsang couldn't help but sigh in her heart. I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying that you don't have to do this. Xiang Kaiping stood there helplessly, not knowing what to do. Su Qingsang felt helpless again. She turned to look at Hua Jinyao, who had just changed his shoes. Yes, Auntie. Since you're here, you're our elder. How can we let you do things? Let Sister Lu do these things. Okay. Then these. Xiang Kaiping looked at the dishes on the table carefully. Su Qingsang felt a little sad. It's okay. That's it for today. The two of them went to wash their hands and sat down at the table to eat. Xiang Kaiping made the local specialty of Lin City. She burned a lot of food on the table. Seeing Su Qingsang sit down, she seemed to be very happy. I don't know what you like to eat. I cooked these the way I used to. I wonder if the cooking habits of the people in Lin City have changed after so many years. It's okay. Auntie, please have a seat. Su Qingsang had never been a harsh person. Not to mention that this person was her biological mother. Even though Hua Jinyao had some doubts in his heart at first, half of them were gone after reading the investigation report. Now that he had seen Xiang Caiping's performance, his doubts were gone again. The meal was rather quiet. Xiang Kaiping ate very quietly. She basically only picked up the food in front of her. Su Qingsang felt a little apologetic, so she picked up some food with her chopsticks and put it in her bowl. Xiang Caiping's eyes reddened at Su Qingsang's gesture. She looked as if she was about to cry. Su Qingsang felt uncomfortable because of her reaction. He didn't dare to take any more food and just ate quietly. After dinner, Xiang Kaiping stood up to clear the dishes. Su Qingsang didn't stop him. She followed him into the living room and sat down. She looked in the direction of the kitchen, then looked at Hua Jinyao. You said that she had her own business in Rong City? Yes. Did she do well? Not bad. Although it wasn't in a first-tier city, she had opened a chain supermarket in several second-tier and third-tier prefecture-level cities. It seemed that business was good. Chapter 278. If she had lived a good life, how could she have aged so much? She should be younger than Su Qinghui, but she looked more than 10 years older than him. Yes. It was not easy for a woman to make a career in a foreign country. Xiang Kaiping had suffered a lot in the past few years. Her family business was not small for ordinary people. However, it was still not enough for the Hua family. Even so, Hua Jinyao admired her. At least she didn't collapse after losing her lover and child like other women. Su Qingsang nodded and reached out to hold Hua Jinyao's arm. Her voice was very soft. Seeing her being so careful, I can't bear it in my heart. Do you think I'm too soft-hearted? No. Although his Qingsang was easily soft-hearted, Hua Jinyao knew in his heart that it was probably because of their mother-daughter nature. To be honest, although I don't feel like a mother to her yet, I'm willing to try to accept her slowly. It's okay. I don't think Auntie will mind. Okay. As Su Qingsang spoke, she remembered that Xiang Kaiping had seen them fooling around yesterday. She couldn't help but sit up straight. As expected, Xiang Kaiping came out not long after she sat down. She stood by the coffee table and didn't sit down. Auntie, please sit down. Yes. Okay. Xiang Kaiping sat down with the same posture. Su Qingsang sighed in her heart. She was really helpless against such a person with such an attitude. After thinking about it, she got up and went to the kitchen to get a few glasses of water. She found some fruit from the fridge and cut it. When she came out, she put the water and fruit in front of Xiang Kaiping. Auntie, have some fruit. I'll do it myself. I'll do it myself. Xiang Kaiping couldn't let her do it. She raised her hand to stop her. Auntie. Su Qingsang knew that if she didn't make things clear, Xiang Kaiping would continue like this. Other things were fine, but who could stand her being so polite? There's something I think we'd better make clear first. Go ahead. Go ahead. Xiang Kaiping had already picked up the water, but now she put it down. Su Qingsang looked at her and put the water in her hand. Auntie, I'm fine. Listen to me, it's not a big deal. It's like this. All these years, I haven't seen you, nor have I interacted with you. It's my fault, Xiang Kaiping was in a hurry to speak, but Su Qingsang knew what she was going to say. Auntie, I'm not blaming you. I just want to say that the past is in the past. Forget it. It didn't matter who was right or wrong. But in the future, we just have to get along in the future. What do you think? Xiang Caiping's eyes reddened again. What do you mean by that? Do you believe me now? Yes. I believe in you. Su Qingsang had no reason not to believe her, although she still couldn't develop mother-daughter feelings for this woman. Auntie. Don't blame me. Although I believe you, I can't call you for the time being. She didn't finish her sentence, but Xiang Kaiping understood. She knew everything. I know. Stop it. I don't want you to call me Mom. You can call me Auntie if you want. You can call me by my name if you don't want to. I don't mind. I really don't mind. She put down the glass as she spoke, and her hands moved quickly. Then let's do this from now on. You're staying here anyway. If there's anything in the future, just tell me. Don't be too polite. After all, you're an elder. Yes, yes, Xiang Kaiping answered hurriedly. Chapter 279. I'm fine. It was fine. It's all done. Su Qingsang knew that Xiang Kaiping wouldn't be able to change her cautious attitude for the time being. Anyway, there was still a long way to go. They could take their time. That night, Su Qingsang went back to her room and lay on the bed. She thought about the expression on Xiang Caiping's face that day and felt some sympathy for her. Hua Jinyao. Let's stay at the villa this weekend. Bring Auntie along. Alright, I'll listen to you. She looks like she hasn't had a good time these past few years. I don't know how to treat her well. You're being nice to her by accepting her. Really? It's true. Then, I'll go shopping with her this weekend? Can you buy some clothes for her? Sure. I'll be your driver. Sure. Su Qingsang looked up at him. The more she looked at Hua Jinyao, the better he looked. He really did everything according to her wishes. She couldn't help but raise her head and kiss his chin. Hua Jinyao narrowed his eyes and suddenly turned over to press her down. That's it? What? I'm going to be your chauffeur this weekend, and this is your thank you gift? You. Su Qingsang was a little embarrassed. I wasn't giving you a thank you gift. How did it turn into a thank you gift? So you're saying that you don't need to thank me? How would you like me to thank you? You're so smart. How could you not think of it? Hua Jinyao's smile was full of evil intentions, which made Su Qingsang a little uncomfortable. After thinking for a moment, she reached out her hand and placed it on Hua Jinyao's chest. In the end, Hua Jinyao was quite satisfied with the gift. He was very satisfied. Su Qingsang glanced at the medical records in her hands when she entered Ward 7. This room belonged to the pregnant woman who had jumped off the building. She had been living in the hospital for 3 days, and she realized that no one had come to see her. No one had taken care of her either. It was the nurses in the hospital who were taking care of her. Su Qingsang furrowed her brows and went in to give the pregnant woman a normal checkup. He asked casually as he was about to leave. Where's your family? The pregnant woman's hands and feet were broken, and she was wearing a cast. She could only move one of her hands. He straightened the clothes of the child beside him with one hand. I don't know. Maybe he gambled somewhere. She jumped off the building because her husband wanted to gamble with the little money left in the house. She refused to let him take it, so he hit her. Feeling helpless, she decided to jump off the building in a fit of anger. In the end, it didn't even pose a threat to the dead man. Because the other party took the money and ran away. Su Qingsang didn't know what else to say. She went out of the ward and told the nurse to take care of her. She also asked someone to hire a volunteer for her. After arranging these things, she felt a little better. His phone rang at this moment. Hua Jinyao texted her, saying that he had a business meeting tonight and wouldn't be home for dinner. Su Qingsang replied, got it. Not long after she returned to her office and sat down, she heard noises outside. She still had a pregnant woman to examine, but the voice on the other side was getting louder and louder. Su Qingsang couldn't even examine the pregnant woman. She said goodbye to the pregnant woman in front of her, got up, and went outside. Who knew that she would see a skinny man dragging Lu Xiangyu out of the room? Lu Xiangyu was the pregnant woman who jumped off the building. At this moment, her hands and feet were broken, and she was being dragged by someone. She looked very embarrassed. The nurse and several young doctors were trying to stop him, but the man insisted on dragging her outside. Chapter 280. The man didn't expect Su Qingsang to push him like that. Everyone else was trying to pull Lu Xiangyu away. Su Qingsang was the only one who pushed. He staggered a couple of steps back and let go of Lu Xiangyu. As soon as he loosened his grip, several nurses quickly came forward to help Lu Xiangyu up. Seeing that the man was about to come again, Su Qingsang quickly stood in front of him. Who are you? This is a hospital. What are you doing? What? What does it have to do with you that I'm taking my wife out of the hospital? Get lost. Get out of my sight. Discharged? Su Qingsang's eyes widened. Do you know about your wife's condition? She just had a cesarean section. It had only been 3 days. How can he be discharged? Why can't I be discharged? Your hospital eats human blood. She stayed here for a few days, and you spent more than 10,000? Are you bullying me? I don't care. I won't pay for it. I want her discharged right now. Impossible. Not to mention that Lu Xiangyu's condition was originally not good. Even if she didn't jump off a building, she wouldn't be discharged so soon after a normal C-section. What does it have to do with you? The man glared at Su Qingsang, not forgetting to roll up his sleeves, looking like he was about to hit her. Seeing this, Su Qingsang advanced instead of retreating. He took a step forward. What's wrong? You want to fight? Take a look at where you are. Your wife can't be discharged from the hospital in her current condition. If you want to cause trouble, I'll call the police. How dare you? There's nothing to be afraid of. Without looking back, Su Qingsang ordered Huang Jia and Qing Siyu. Huang Jia, call the security guards. Siyu, call the police. Just say that someone is causing trouble here. Seeing this, the man nodded hatefully. Good, good. You won't let me take her out of the hospital, will you? Then I won't answer it. He would never answer it. You let her stay here. I'm not going to pay for it. After saying this, the man left without looking back. Su Qingsang had no time to care about that man. She turned around and looked at Lu Xiangyu. She's not doing well. The bandage on his hand had loosened. Are you okay? Lu Xiangyu's face turned pale as she gently shook her head. This morning, the nurse asked her to pay when she checked the ward. Where did she get the money? She could only call her gambling addict husband. She didn't expect her husband to not only refuse to pay but also drag her out of the hospital. Doctor, I don't feel burdened. Let's recuperate here first. Doctor. You're a good person. Lu Xiangyu was about to cry, but Su Qingsang quickly stopped her. Don't be like this. You're still in confinement. Crying is not good for your health. He asked the nurse and doctor to send the patient back and re-examined and bandaged the wound. After today's incident, the whole hospital knew about it. Afterward, Director Lin from the hospital administration came to see Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang explained the situation. Director Lin said that the money could be discussed later, but the patient should be treated first. As a result, Su Qingsang got off work much later than usual. When she got home, it was already past 8:00 in the evening. Only then did she realize that Xiang Kaiping had not eaten yet. The dishes on the table had already gone cold. She sat in the living room waiting for them. Xiang Kaiping stood up when she heard the door open. You're back. It's great that you're back. It's great that you're back. Looking into his eyes, Su Qingsang felt a warm current slowly flowing through her heart. Auntie, have you been waiting for dinner? I'm not waiting for you. After saying that, Xiang Kaiping was afraid that Su Qingsang would overthink, so she quickly waved her hand. I'm not waiting for you on purpose. It's just that I don't have the energy to eat alone. Not really. Anyway. Chapter 281. Aunt. Su Qingsang blinked and suppressed the urge to cry. Next time, if we don't come back at the appointed time, you don't have to wait for us. We don't have a fixed schedule. I'm fine. I have nothing to do anyway. Xiang Kaiping smiled kindly. Su Qingsang knew that it would be difficult to change her mind, but she reminded herself to call her the next time she couldn't come back in time. Speaking of which, Xiang Kaiping hadn't used her cell phone in the past few days. Should I take her to buy one? She bought a cell phone, saved her and Hua Jinyao's phone numbers, and set them as emergency numbers. He told her that she could look for him if she needed help. Looking at the wrinkles at the corners of Xiang Caiping's eyes, Su Qingsang told herself that there was really nothing unacceptable. With such a mother, she would accept her sooner or later. Qingsang? Are you upset? Nope. Aunt. I'll wash my hands. Then eat. AI. Let me heat up the food. All right. Su Qingsang went into the bathroom and washed her face with cold water. When she came out, her mood had returned to normal. It was rare that Hua Jinyao wasn't at home. After dinner, Xiang Kaiping wanted to talk to Su Qingsang. Qingsang, you said last time that you and Jinyao found each other on your own. Then how did you know each other? Can you tell me about it? Sure. Su Qingsang wanted to say something, but she suddenly didn't know where to start. If he really had to talk about it, he would have to start with Wei Lenin. In fact, she felt that she should thank Wei Lenin for cheating on her. Otherwise, how could she have met such a good man like Hua Jinyao? This could also be considered fate, right? The fate between her and Hua Jinyao. However, when she met Xiang Caiping's worried gaze, it was obvious that she couldn't bring herself to talk about the past. It was all in the past. Su Qingsang casually told him what had happened, without adding any embellishments. Speaking of how well Hua Jinyao had treated her these days, she had a faint smile on her face. Xiang Kaiping was experienced. How could she not see that the happiness on Su Qingsang's face was genuine? After observing Hua Jinyao for the past few days, she had gained some understanding of him. You're lucky to have met Hua Jinyao. He looks like a nice guy at first glance. I'm relieved that you're doing well. Xiang Kaiping couldn't help but worry if she didn't see her daughter living a happy life. Su Qingsang nodded. She could sense the concern in Xiang Caiping's words, and it worked. Auntie, don't worry. Hua Jinyao treats me very well. Although she hadn't fallen in love with him yet, she believed that it would happen sooner or later. I can see that. Xiang Caiping's voice was filled with emotion. Your luck is much better than mine. Your father. She suddenly stopped and looked at Su Qingsang with hesitation in her eyes. How has your father been all these years? After she left Lin City, she never paid attention to Lin City or any news about Su Qinghui. She told herself that yesterday's events were like yesterday's death. Since she had left, Su Qinghui's fate was not something she should be concerned about. However, in the past few days, she had seen a face that looked similar to Su Qinghui's, so she couldn't help but care about him again. My dad? Su Qingsang looked at Xiang Kaiping. She wasn't surprised that Xiang Kaiping asked about Su Qinghui, but she said, I don't know. I haven't been back there for a long time. I don't know how he is doing. Chapter 282. Yes. Su Qingsang nodded. I moved out after I married Jinyao. Then, I was busy with work, and so was Jinyao. We don't always have time to go. In fact, it was Su Qinghui who didn't want to see them. However, Su Qingsang wouldn't say that out loud. But last time, when Hua Jinyao held a banquet in his company, I saw Dad. He seems fine. Then, An. Xiang Kaiping paused. She suddenly felt that it was inappropriate for her to ask this question. He doesn't have a good relationship with Auntie, Li Qianxue. Su Qingsang knew that there was no point in lying about this. Or maybe Xiang Kaiping wanted to hear this. On the surface, they are the model couple in Lin City's business circle. They treated each other with respect. But I don't think it's good. Is that so? Xiang Kaiping was silent. No one knew what she was thinking. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Su Qingsang didn't know what to say. As a junior, it was not appropriate for her to intervene in the affairs of the elders. To ease the awkwardness, Su Qingsang decided to change the topic. Do you want to see his photo? Do you? Of course. Su Qingsang didn't have Su Qinghui's photo on her phone. However, she had added Su Yusen as a friend on QQ last time, so Su Yusen had a lot of photos in his space. Xiang Caiping's eyes lit up. After being apart for so many years, she still wanted to see Su Qinghui. Su Qingsang took out her phone and clicked on Su Yusen's WeChat space. He had a photo album that his family could see. There were photos of all the members of the Su family, including Old Master Li. Su Qingsang showed Su Qinghui's photo to Xiang Kaiping. It was taken when Su Qinghui attended a banquet. He was dressed in a suit and leather shoes, looking elegant. He looked like a 40-year-old man. He was holding a glass of wine and chatting with someone. Xiang Kaiping stared at the photo, and her eyes suddenly reddened. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 years had passed. Su Qinghui hadn't changed at all. He still looked the same, but she had aged. She also wanted to meet Su Qinghui if she could. But from the looks of it now, there was no need for them to meet again. Auntie? Su Qingsang wasn't sure what Xiang Caiping's reaction meant. She wanted to take the phone back, but Xiang Caiping's hand swiped on the screen. The next photo was of Su Qinghui's family of 4. This was taken on Su Peijian's birthday. Su Peijian and Su Yusen were standing in front, and Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue were standing behind them. The family of 4 was good-looking, well-dressed, and had a good temperament. Xiang Caiping's hand trembled. Who is he? Su Yusen's features were similar to Su Qinghui's, just a smaller version. In Xiang Caiping's eyes, this was Su Qinghui when he was young. He's the younger brother. My dad and auntie gave birth to her later. He's 8 years younger than us. Xiang Kaiping was stunned. For a moment, she forgot to ask why Su Qingsang was not in the photo of the family of 4. Her face was very pale, and Su Qingsang found that she seemed to be trembling. Auntie? Are you okay? I'm fine. Xiang Kaiping shook her head and murmured. Su Qingsang heard her clearly. She called him a liar. Liar? Who is the liar? Qingsang, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. I'm going back to my room to rest. Auntie? I'm fine. Xiang Kaiping stood up. She didn't look too good. She didn't even care about the weird look on Su Qingsang's face. After so many years, she still remembered what Su Qinghui said. Chapter 283. He said that although he married Li Qianxue, he had no choice. He said that except for that accident, he would never touch Li Qianxue. He would keep his chastity for her and make her trust him. Xiang Kaiping smiled. That smile was a little bitter. She suddenly felt that she could let go of her obsession for so many years. Because Su Qinghui was a liar. He lied to her about his feelings. He had said it before, but now, he even had a son. What was this? Su Qingsang watched Xiang Kaiping disappear into the back of the room and felt that something was wrong. She looked back at the phone. Was Xiang Kaiping angry because of this photo? Su Qingsang waited for Hu Jinyao to come back and told him about it at night. Do you think Auntie was provoked in some way? I don't know. Hu Jinyao didn't quite understand Xiang Caiping's reaction. Is it because she's unhappy that your father had a child with another woman? Su Qingsang was stunned. She thought about it and thought it was really possible. Maybe. The man she liked had a child with another woman, there should be other reasons. Hua Jinyao thought of the key point. Think about it. Su Peijian is older than you. That means she should have known that your father had a child with another woman. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Su Qingsang couldn't understand and didn't want to think about it. But my father he didn't want to marry Li Qianxue and got Xiang Kaiping pregnant. It can only be said that it was a freak accident. Hua Jinyao actually didn't like Su Qinghui. If you are really so determined, don't care about Li Qianxue and refuse to the end. If you really want to care about it, don't be with Li Qianxue and Xiang Kaiping at the same time. Su Qingsang didn't say anything. She knew what happened that year and didn't think it was a freak accident. In the end, it was all Su Qinghui's responsibility. Of course, Li Qianxue was also responsible. A forceful melon would not be sweet, but she insisted on forcing it. The result was the pain of the three of them. Why? Sweetheart, tomorrow is Friday. Why don't you take Mom shopping tomorrow night after you get off work and walk around? The three of us will go out on the weekend after tomorrow? Okay. Su Qingsang nodded. She also wanted to take Xiang Kaiping out for a walk. My mom came here, but she didn't have a cell phone. I plan to take her to buy one tomorrow and apply for a card. Yes. Hua Jinyao thought for a moment, then took out a black card from his wallet and handed it to Su Qingsang. Remember to use my card. Why do I have to use your card? I have money. Hua Jinyao had thought of giving Su Qingsang a credit card before, but his identity hadn't been exposed at that time. He was afraid that she would be suspicious if he gave it to her. He had forgotten about it after returning from Rome City. This time, it was just right. Besides, mobile payments are everywhere now. Who would still carry a card? Su Qingsang glanced at him. Hua Jinyao nodded and said, "You take it too. This can also be tied to the payment app on your phone." Su Qingsang looked at the card in his hand and finally reached out to take it. "If I don't spend your money, will you feel uncomfortable?" "Of course." Hua Jinyao nodded. "You're my wife. Aren't you supposed to spend my money? If you're not willing to spend my money, then why should I make so much money?" "You're so talkative." Su Qingsang put the card aside. "Okay. Yes. Okay. Sleep." He liked this suggestion. Chapter 284. What are you doing? I said I'm going to sleep. Yeah. Let's sleep. You sleep, and I'll sleep. Hua Jinyao was so shameless that Su Qingsang almost laughed out of anger. She wanted to resist, but he succeeded in the end. She thought about it and decided to let him be. The next day, there wasn't much to do in the hospital. Su Qingsang entered all the records into the computer in the afternoon, looked around the wards, and then went home. She told the housekeeper not to cook and took Xiang Kaiping out to eat. Although Xiang Kaiping didn't look abnormal when she woke up this morning, Su Qingsang still wanted to make her happy. There was a department store near Su Qingsang's house. After dinner with Xiang Kaiping, they went shopping together. "Qingsang, I have clothes to wear. You don't have to buy these." "Auntie, it's okay." Su Qingsang held her arm. "The weather here is different from Rome City. We can always buy more." Qingsang. Xiang Kaiping was very touched, but she didn't know what to say. "Auntie, you don't have to be so polite with me." Su Qingsang thought about it and decided to take Xiang Kaiping to buy a cell phone first. The department store was next to a large communication center. When Xiang Kaiping was in Rome City, she only used a landline phone. Su Qingsang chose a thin and light smartphone for her, which had good performance in all aspects. "Auntie, let me tell you how to use this phone." She downloaded all kinds of software for Xiang Kaiping. Then, he added his own account in the software. Xiang Kaiping had been in a semi-secluded state before, but now she looked at the phone and learned quite seriously. You mean, I can send you a message by pressing this WeChat button? Don't I have to type? No. I'll teach you. I'll teach you. You can do this. Su Qingsang sent a voice message to Xiang Kaiping as she spoke. Then she used Xiang Caiping's phone to let her listen. It's so clear. Xiang Kaiping smiled happily. It's much better than the phones I used before. In the past, whenever it was convenient for her to communicate, she would always use the old model. This was the first time she used it. Yes. If I don't come back for dinner next time, I'll use this to send you a message. Good. This is good. Xiang Kaiping liked it very much, but Su Qingsang felt a little sad. Both Su Chenghui and Li Qinshue's phones were custom-made. Usually, their partners would send them all kinds of electronic products. Xiang Kaiping was rich, but she still let herself live like that. It must be because she had been heartbroken. You don't want to just enjoy yourself, do you? He secretly made up his mind to treat Xiang Kaiping better in the future, but it was not too late to start now. Auntie, you can slowly learn how to use a mobile phone at home. Let's go buy clothes first. Okay. Xiang Kaiping put her phone away, and the two of them went shopping. After entering the department store, Su Qingsang led Xiang Kaiping straight to the women's clothing department. Xiang Kaiping used to wear old-fashioned clothes. Su Qingsang picked out a few sets of clothes for her that looked young and elegant. Auntie, go ahead and try. It's okay. Isn't she too young? Xiang Kaiping didn't think it was appropriate, but she still went to try. Su Qingsang watched as Xiang Kaiping walked into the fitting room. She wanted to help Xiang Kaiping pick out a few more clothes. At this time, another customer came in. She didn't notice it at first, but the moment she raised her head, she saw the reflection of the figure in the mirror. Chapter 285. She froze for a moment and didn't have time to put the clothes back on the rack. Su Peijian and the others had already noticed her. Su Peijian saw Su Qingsang at once. She was really angry when she saw Su Qingsang. This woman was used to pretending to be innocent and kind. She made people think that she was a good person. But what happened? She stole Qiu Yanba's heart without saying a word. She started to pretend to be innocent. Su Peijian remembered that she had specially called Qiu Junjiu out today just to try again. But Qiu Junjiu refused to come out. She knew that she might have been busy and didn't have time to come, but she couldn't help but wonder if it was Qiu Yanba's idea. Now that she saw Su Qingsang, Su Peijian started to feel uncomfortable. She didn't hide her emotions at all. Luo Meishan and Song Yoha, who were next to her, felt it and saw Su Qingsang at the same time. Everyone knew that the Su family had an illegitimate daughter who couldn't be shown in public. Every time they met before, Luo Meishan and Song Yoha didn't forget to say a few words of sarcasm. But now, Luo Meishan and Song Yoha didn't say anything. Although they didn't go to the Tianyu group's banquet last time, they were reminded by their elders when they came back. Su Qingsang was no longer the same as before. She wasn't just the illegitimate daughter of the Su family. She had another identity now. She was the wife of the CEO of the Tianyu group. The two of them didn't say anything and just stood behind Su Peijian. Su Peijian looked around and knew what the two of them were thinking. She became more and more angry. These people didn't want to offend Hu Jinyao or the Tianyu group, but could they offend the Li family and the Su family? Su Peijian glared at Luo Meishan and Song Yoha with a fierce look. The two of them met her eyes. For a moment, they looked a little anxious. Su Qingsang didn't have any interest in the eyes of these three rich young ladies. Seeing Su Peijian, she knew how much she disliked her, so she naturally wouldn't rush to talk to her and get close to her. She nodded slightly as a greeting and turned around to continue picking out clothes. Xiang Kaiping had only brought a box of clothes this time. She wanted to buy a few more sets for her. In the end, the two of them looked at each other. Luo Meishan took a step forward, looked at Su Qingsang, and said, "It's really different now that you have the CEO of Tianyu Group. In the past, how could a person like you enter a store like this?" Su Qingsang paused and turned to look at Luo Meishan again. At this moment, Song Yoha also said, "Isn't that so? I'm like a phoenix that has flown up the branches. Unfortunately, crows are crows. You really don't have much foresight." Luo Meishan glanced at the clothes in Su Qingsang's hands and clicked her tongue. Su Qingsang looked like she was only in her 20s, but the clothes she had chosen seemed to be worn by someone in her 40s. If this wasn't bad taste, then what was? Su Qingsang put down the clothes in her hands and looked at Su Peijian. She stood behind Luo and Song, the corners of her lips curling up, clearly in the mood to watch a good show. She knew that even without Qiu Yanba, she and Su Peijian would never be able to get along. However, she didn't expect that she would still rush to embarrass herself in front of her at this time. Chapter 286. As soon as she said that, the faces of the shop assistants on the side darkened. Their store only sold high-end women's clothing and took the luxury route. There was hardly a second piece of clothing for each piece. It would be strange if such a store was said to be unpresentable. However, it was obvious that the people in front of them were not ordinary people. Since the shop assistants were unhappy, they couldn't show it clearly. Luo Meishan's face darkened even more. If that was what she meant, wouldn't she also be unpresentable if she entered this store? "I didn't mean that." Su Qingsang's words made Luo Meishan angry. "I'm just saying that you have bad taste. Buying clothes in this store is called having bad taste?" Su Qingsang looked Luo Meishan up and down and snorted. "Then your taste is not very good either." Luo Meishan was at a loss for words. Song Yoha narrowed her eyes. She had met Su Qingsang several times in the past, but she had never seen Su Qingsang with such a face. What was this? Had she become bolder after having a backer and background? "Meishan, you really don't know how to talk. You are obviously not presentable and don't deserve the clothes here. Why are you saying that these clothes are not presentable when it comes to you? You really..." It seemed like she was blaming Su Qingsang, but in fact, she was belittling her. Su Qingsang nodded. "So, in your hearts, clothes are more presentable than people, right? No wonder. Usually, they are not presentable people. Without clothes, they are naturally not presentable." "Su Qingsang, who are you scolding?" This time, Luo Meishan was furious and pointed at Su Qingsang. Her face was full of anger. Su Qingsang cleared her throat and took a step back. "I'm not scolding anyone. But if you think so, then there's nothing I can do." Su Peijian didn't speak. She stood less than 2 meters away from Su Qingsang and watched her stab the others with a faint smile on her face. She narrowed her eyes and was very sure of one thing. Su Qingsang had probably been pretending to be weak in the past 20 years in the Su family. Look at her, where was the cautious look from before? She was deceived by Su Qingsang, and she was afraid that Li Qianxue was also deceived by Su Qingsang. "Su Qingsang, don't be so smug. Didn't you just hook up with Hua Jinyao? If it weren't for him, you..." Before Luo Meishan could finish her sentence, the fitting room door opened. Xiang Kaiping walked over. "Qingsang, what do you think of these clothes?" She looked up and saw that Su Qingsang was surrounded by a few girls, and they weren't wearing the clothes of the shop assistants. She seemed to have heard something about Hua Jinyao just now. What was going on? "Qingsang?" "Auntie, I'm fine." Su Qingsang ignored Su Peijian and the others. No matter what happened to Su Peijian, it had nothing to do with her. Right now, she was thinking about nurturing her mother-daughter relationship with Xiang Kaiping. Naturally, she wouldn't care about those unrelated people. "It's pretty good, better than the previous ones. This one is not bad either." She handed the dress that she had just picked, the one that Luo Meishan had complained about, to Xiang Kaiping. "Auntie, try this one on, too." "There's no need. Why did you buy so much?" "As long as it's enough." Xiang Kaiping waved her hand. She knew that her daughter wanted to be good to her, and she was touched. But that was enough. Chapter 287. She glanced over and saw Su Peijian right away. That face looked really familiar. "Just go and try it on." "It's okay." Su Qingsang was very patient. "Once you're done shopping, come with me later. I need to change into some clothes." "Okay." In fact, she had clothes to wear. Hua Jinyao didn't hide it anymore after his identity was exposed. She had sent a lot of clothes for the 4 seasons to her house. However, she was afraid that Xiang Kaiping would feel uncomfortable, so she could only think of ways to stop her from thinking too much. Especially when she saw that Xiang Kaiping was looking at Su Peijian, she stood in front of her and blocked her view. In her opinion, it was better for Xiang Kaiping not to meet the Su family, no matter who it was. "Okay." Xiang Kaiping smiled. The wrinkles at the corner of her eyes were full of pride. "You're still young. You should dress up more." "I'm old. It doesn't matter what I wear." As she spoke, she couldn't win against Su Qingsang and went to try on the clothes. Before she left, she glanced at Su Peijian again. After a few more glances, she remembered. Wasn't that girl yesterday? She was looking at Su Peijian, and Su Peijian was looking at Xiang Kaiping. At first, Su Peijian thought that this old woman was Su Qingsang's mother-in-law, which was Hua Jinyao's mother. However, when she heard Su Qingsang's address, she was a little hesitant. Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao were married. So she couldn't call his mother aunt? Su Qingsang, who is she? Inexplicably, Su Peijian just wanted to find out. Su Qingsang watched Xiang Caiping's figure disappear behind the fitting room, then turned to Su Peijian. "Does it have anything to do with you?" Su Qingsang. Su Peijian was angry. "Don't be too arrogant. Don't forget who gave you who you are today." "Yes. Your Su family gave it to me. So do you want me to be grateful?" "There's no need to be deeply grateful. Just don't be heartless and ungrateful." Su Peijian's words were quite rude. Su Qingsang smiled. "Even if you're ungrateful, you have to be forgetful and ungrateful. If Miss Su remembers correctly, I am also Su Qinghui's daughter." Before hearing about Xiang Caiping's experience, she had always been curious about her own background. She had always thought that it was normal for Li Qianxue to treat her like that. But now that she thought about it, what did it have to do with her? It was all Su Qinghui's fault. If Li Qianxue didn't want to see her, she could ask Su Qinghui not to accept her. But what about him? He had accepted her and brought her back to the Su family. When had he ever given her any fatherly love? Su Qingsang. Su Peijian nodded. "Good, very good. Are you determined to go against me?" "I don't dare." Su Qingsang raised her head and puffed out her chest. She wasn't afraid of Su Peijian's expression at all. "I don't want to go against you. I just want to mind my own business." Su Qingsang. "I really underestimated you in the past." Su Peijian stared at Su Qingsang's face, snorted, and looked at Luo Meishan and Song Yoha. "Let's go." Su Qingsang turned her face sideways and made a gesture of invitation. Su Peijian's face grew darker and darker. She kept a straight face until they left the shop. Su Qingsang stood there, and the smile on her face faded. If she could, she really didn't want to fight with Su Peijian like this. In the past, Su Peijian wasn't good to her, but she wouldn't deliberately make things difficult for her. Thinking of the reason that made Su Peijian like this, Su Qingsang felt a headache. It was all Qiu Yanba's fault. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.